Chapter 334 The Sword opens the heavenly gate, shocking the purple mansion Holy Land. At the same time, the entire sky turned a fiery red because of this dragon of fire, as if a fiery red sun had appeared in the dark night sky. Meanwhile, Li Chungang, who was opposite him, glanced disdainfully at the Blood Rain Tower assassin, and then lightly tapped his toes. He instantly appeared in the dark night sky, and at the same time, a terrifying chi emanated from his body, which instantly suppressed the surrounding heaven and earth power, forcing them to continuously retreat. Even the dragon of fire summoned by the Blood Rain Tower assassin began to tremble slowly, as if this power could resolve all of them. As for the group of Yao beasts below, they began to kneel in the direction of Li Chungang, who stood in the sky like an emperor in the dark night. Is this truly the sword god? Feng Xingyang looked at Li Chungang standing in the sky, his eyes filled with envy. Only now did he understand what a true sword god was. Just standing there, he resembled an emperor between heaven and earth. Currently, he could not reach this step. Although Li Chunggang's cultivation had not reached the Great Saint realm, his Sword Dao realm had long surpassed the so-called Saint King realm and had even reached the precise realm. It could be said that as long as his realm kept up, his Sword Dao realm would be extremely powerful. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Li Chungang. Even black and white mysterious sword wore an excited expression, naturally thrilled to witness such a powerful expert display a move. How is this possible? We are both late Saint King. How can your strength be so formidable? The Blood Rain Tower assassin looked at Li Chungang, his eyes filled with disbelief. He had not expected Li Chunggang's strength to reach such a terrifying level. Just standing in the sky made him feel uneasy, even making him feel as if he was facing an insurmountable mountain. At this moment, the Blood Rain Tower assassin's face was filled with disbelief and helplessness. But how could Li Chungang give him a chance now? He saw him lightly toss the long sword in his hand. Afterward, he slowly walked toward the sky as if stepping on an invisible staircase, and his entire being was surrounded by an invisible sword intent. I have a sword move, named Sword Opens the Heavenly Gate. Immediately after, his aged yet domineering voice slowly rang out from the sky. This voice seemed to be full of magic, causing everyone's attention to involuntarily focus on him. This voice was not only spreading around the Cloud Dragon sect, but even cultivators millions of miles away heard it, causing them all to look toward the direction from which the voice came. At the same time, a silver-white light appeared in the sky, as if tearing through the long night. And just after Li Chunggang's voice fell, a silver-white heavenly gate suddenly appeared in the sky. This heavenly gate seemed like the Tao leading to the immortal realm. Subsequently, the heavenly gate slowly opened, and a long sword extended from within. This long sword slowly descended from the heavenly gate. At this moment, the entire world fell silent. Everyone watched the heavenly gate in the sky and the long sword descending from it with looks of disbelief. Even the Blood Rain Tower assassin's eyes were filled with disbelief at this moment. He had not expected Li Chungang could execute such a move, and the chi emanating from the long sword that appeared inside the heavenly gate in the sky had far surpassed the sword techniques displayed by any sword cultivator he had ever seen. However, it was not only the Cloud Dragon sect side that witnessed the appearance of the heavenly gate and the long sword descending from it. The Purple Cloud Holy Land, which was close to the Cloud Dragon sect, naturally also saw the heavenly gate appearing in the sky. Subsequently, the elders and holy lord of the Purple Cloud Holy Land, who were above the Saint King level, all appeared in the main hall. This is the sword technique of a peerless expert, simply relying on sword intent to pry open the heavenly gate in the sky. This person's strength is truly terrifying. A Saint King level elder looked at the heavenly gate in the sky and spoke with disbelief, then looked toward the direction of the Cloud Dragon sect with excitement in his eyes. The assassins currently at the Cloud Dragon sect must be from the Netherworld and the Blood Rain Tower. It is impossible for a Blood Rain Tower assassin to execute such a terrifying move, so this heavenly gate must have been displayed by an expert from the Netherworld. It seems we all underestimated the Netherworld. Another Saint King level elder slowly turned his gaze toward the heavenly gate in the sky and said, as a Saint King level expert within the top forces of the Central region, he naturally knew of the Netherworld's existence. However, they hadn't taken the Netherworld seriously at first, but they hadn't expected the Netherworld's strength to be so terrifying. Sword opens the heavenly gate. What a magnificent sword opens the heavenly gate. Another Saint King level sword cultivator looked excitedly at the heavenly gate in the sky and the long sword within it. At this moment, he seemed to have found his own Tao. The Netherworld's strength has far exceeded our imagination. I'm afraid there isn't much difference between them and our top forces. After all, this person's power has made me feel threatened as well. The Holy Lord of the Purple Cloud Holy Land, who had remained silent, slowly spoke now. he naturally felt the terrifying sword intent emanating from the heavenly gate in the sky. It could be said that even though the distance was great, he felt this terrifying power. Even he sensed a hint of threat from this terrifying power. Yes, the Netherworld is probably not as simple as we imagined. The Central Region is about to gain another assassin organization. Another great saint-level Grand Elder also spoke slowly. He did not believe that Li Chungang was the strongest person in the Netherworld. After all, how could a force dispatch their strongest assassin just to assassinate a cultivator who was only at the saint entry level? Of course, they did not know that Li Chungang was one of the two strongest individuals in the Netherworld. This time, the Netherworld wanted to reveal its true strength, which is why Li Chungang was allowed to take action. At this moment, those top forces located far away also felt the terrifying sword intent in the sky. But because they were too far from the Cloud Dragon sect, they did not see the heavenly gate that appeared in the sky. However, upon sensing this terrifying sword intent, they all looked toward the direction of the Cloud Dragon sect. At this time, they all understood that the current battle must be between the top experts of the Netherworld and the Blood Rain Tower. Chapter 335: The Attention of Top Powers, the End of the Great War, and the Disbandment of the Cloud Dragon sect. Although they didn't know the outcome of this great battle at the moment, they were still somewhat surprised when they felt the terrifying sword intent emanating from the sky. After all, as top-tier forces in the Central Region, they naturally knew that there were no such powerful sword cultivators in the Blood Rain Tower, so they were aware that this terrifying sword intent was not the aura of an expert from the Blood Rain Tower. From this, it could be seen that the underworld strength was not as weak as imagined. In fact, the underworld strength should be able to contend with their top-tier forces. Meanwhile, on the Blood Rain Tower side, the Master of the Blood Rain Tower also looked towards the Cloud Dragon sect's direction with a gloomy expression after sensing this terrifying aura. It seems this so-called underworld is not as simple as we imagined. The owner of this sword intent alone should be a great saint-level cultivator, right? An old man in a purplish-red robe, standing beside the Master of the Blood Rain Tower, slowly spoke as he looked at the sky. Due to the great distance between their Blood Rain Tower and the Cloud Dragon sect, even though he felt this terrifying aura, he couldn't perceive how powerful the cultivation of the owner of this terrifying aura truly was. Therefore, he speculated that the cultivation of the owner of this aura had reached the Great Saint realm. Of course, this was also because Li Chunggang's sword Dao cultivation was extremely powerful. It was even possible that the cultivation of the owner of this terrifying sword intent had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm. However, if a Quasi-Emperor realm expert were to unleash this terrifying sword intent, perhaps the entire Central Region would be able to witness it. I didn't expect the underworld to actually have great saint-level cultivators and to send out a great saint-level cultivator for a mere Cloud Dragon sect. It seems the underworld is not as simple as we imagined. At this moment, another old man in a purple robe also slowly stepped forward and spoke, a hint of helplessness appearing on his face. Those wearing purple robes in the Blood Rain Tower represented top-tier assassins, capable of assassinating great saint-level experts. Of course, great saint-level experts were not that easy to assassinate. Even their top-tier assassins in the Blood Rain Tower would require several of them to assassinate one great saint-level expert. Since we have already probed the underworld's strength, then we should not make a move against the underworld. After all, if my Blood Rain Tower truly goes to war with the underworld, then what awaits our two great forces is likely mutual destruction. The Master of the Blood Rain Tower sighed as he looked at the sky and said, although he wished to destroy the underworld at this moment, he also knew that the Blood Rain Tower and the underworld should not engage in another great battle now. After all, their true enemy was not the underworld. Their true enemy was the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Because the Blood Rain Tower lacked foundation, the Heavenly Dao Alliance had already begun to encroach upon their forces. If the Blood Rain Tower didn't have Quasi-Emperor level experts, it would probably have been completely swallowed by the Heavenly Dao Alliance by now. I think the underworld and the Heavenly Dao Alliance might clash. When that happens, our Blood Rain Tower should have an easier time. Another old man in a purple robe also slowly stepped forward and spoke, a look of anticipation on his face. After all, the Heavenly Dao Alliance originally wanted to devour the entire Central Region, and now with the strong emergence of the underworld, the Heavenly Dao Alliance would definitely take notice of the underworld. Therefore, it would be perfectly normal for a great battle to occur between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the underworld. The others also showed a smile on their faces after hearing the old man's words, as they had already guessed this outcome. And indeed, just as the old man from the Blood Rain Tower had speculated, the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance also frowned when he sensed the terrifying aura in the sky. I didn't expect this underworld to be so powerful. It seems my Heavenly Dao Alliance has gained another enemy. I just don't know if the underworld will join forces with my Heavenly Dao Alliance. But I'm afraid their underworld isn't qualified to join forces with my Heavenly Dao Alliance. The Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance murmured to himself as he looked in the direction from which the terrifying aura came. Although he felt the terrifying nature of this aura at the moment, he didn't truly take the underworld seriously. After all, how could a Heavenly Dao Alliance that dared to oppose the entire central region fear the underworld? And it was an underworld whose strength was unknown. However, the Heavenly Dao Alliance had now completely taken the underworld seriously. Clearly, the strength Li Chungang displayed this time had already caught the attention of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. While the outside world was in turmoil, Li Chunggang's sword opens the heavenly gate and the Cloud Dragon sect also descended. The assassin from the Blood Rain Tower looked at the long sword falling from the sky and was directly cut down by this sword without even a chance to react. And the fire dragon around him was utterly annihilated in the dark night sky without even a chance to resist. As for the early-stage Saint King gold medal assassin on that mountain peak, he was also dealt with by Li Chungang as an afterthought, without even a chance to resist. After dealing with the underworld assassin, Li Chungang gently waved his hand, and the heavenly gate in the sky disappeared. Then, Li Chungang directly landed beside Feng Qingyang. At the same time, his face once again showed that cynical expression, and the long sword in his hand returned to Feng Qingyang's grasp. The fight's over, time to go back to sleep. Li Chungang pouted as he looked at Feng Qingyang, who was still in a daze in front of him. After speaking, he instantly transformed into a streak of light and vanished into the sky. Feng Qingyang also snapped out of his daze after hearing his words. Thus, Feng Qingyang, holding the long sword in his arms, also transformed into a streak of light and followed in Li Chunggang's footsteps. As for the remaining black and white mysterious sword, he directly went to the location of the Cloud Dragon sect treasures. They would not give up the Cloud Dragon sect treasures. As for the disciples and elders of the Cloud Dragon sect, they did not bother with them. After all, how could a few insignificant cultivators below the Saint entry level be taken seriously by them? Moreover, the Cloud Dragon sect, without the protection of Saint entry level cultivators, would probably be completely divided by other forces within a few days. After thoroughly plundering all the treasures of the Cloud Dragon sect, Black and White Mysterious Sword also left the Cloud Dragon sect, and then directly returned to the underworld. And the Cloud Dragon sect also completely came to an end due to this great battle. A cultivator of the Cloud Dragon sect at the peak True King realm, looking at the dilapidated Cloud Dragon sect, directly disbanded the Cloud Dragon sect. If they didn't disband the Cloud Dragon sect, they would probably all die at the hands of others. Now, the best outcome was to disband the Cloud Dragon sect, which would give them a glimmer of hope. Chapter 336 News Spreads. The views of the top powers in the central region on the underworld. The long night passed little by little with time, and soon dawn arrived. The sunlight of dawn illuminated the central region continent, coloring it with a mysterious golden veil. At this time, the cultivators near the Cloud Dragon sect rushed towards the Cloud Dragon sect. They were naturally very aware of the great battle last night. It could even be said that the doomsday-like scene completely shocked them. And now, they were coming to the Cloud Dragon sect to see the outcome of this great battle. Soon, groups of cultivators appeared outside the Cloud Dragon sect's mountain gate. When they appeared outside the Cloud Dragon sect's mountain gate, they were completely dumbfounded. Everyone looked in the direction of the Cloud Dragon sect with incredible gazes. The once magnificent Cloud Dragon sect had now completely become a ruin. One could even see that the mountain peaks within the Cloud Dragon sect had been directly cut in half by terrifying power. At the same time, one could still feel the terrifying chi remaining in those mountain peaks. The bodies of the Yao beasts below were even more countless. At the same time, on the mountain peaks around the Cloud Dragon sect, one could also see terrifying deep pits, and several mountain peaks appear before everyone as if they had been directly smashed through. Looking at this scene, like a battle of the century, all the cultivators present gasped. And at this time, there wasn't even a single cultivator inside the Cloud Dragon sect. All the cultivators of the Cloud Dragon sect had left the Cloud Dragon sect overnight. The great battle last night was truly terrifying. It actually destroyed the entire Cloud Dragon sect. But where did those disciples of the Cloud Dragon sect go? Did the assassins of the underworld kill them all? A cultivator whose cultivation had reached the entering Saint realm spoke blankly as he looked at the scene of the Cloud Dragon sect. At this moment, he also imagined how fierce the battle last night was. However, looking at the silent Cloud Dragon sect at this time, he was still a little surprised. Of course, the most important thing was that he saw no too much blood in the Cloud Dragon sect in front of him. From this, it could be seen that not all the disciples of the Cloud Dragon sect had fallen. Those experts from the underworld should not have killed all the Cloud Dragon sect disciples. After all, how could those experts kill some small cultivators? These disciples of the Cloud Dragon sect should have escaped now. A cultivator shook his head after hearing the words of this saint entry-level cultivator. If the assassins of the underworld were so powerful, how could he kill these disciples of the Cloud Dragon sect? They should have escaped after the underworld assassins left. But the great battle last night was probably the most powerful battle in our central region in recent years. Last night, the entire sky was dyed silver white and blood red. At the same time, that heavenly gate in the sky was also very dazzling. The most terrifying scene I have seen in my life was last night. Yes, when that heavenly gate in the sky appeared, I thought the immortal from heaven would appear. I didn't expect that what appeared from that heavenly gate was actually a long sword that seemed to be able to cut down everything. The most important thing is that the expert from the underworld also shouted, "Sword opens the heavenly gate." Just by relying on sword opens the heavenly gate, he opened the heavenly gate in the sky. How powerful is this expert from the underworld? I wonder if the underworld is still recruiting cultivators. If so, I want to enter the underworld to learn this peerless sword art. Even if you go in, you will only do odd jobs for them. How could they teach you such a peerless sword art? As these few cultivators discussed, the other cultivators also began to discuss. At the same time, some cultivators also began to look forward to joining the underworld. After all, if joining the underworld meant they could cultivate such terrifying peerless sword art, they would definitely be eager to join the underworld. As these cultivators arrived at the Cloud Dragon sect, the scouts of the top forces and first-tier forces also arrived at the Cloud Dragon sect. They mixed among these cultivators, constantly examining the dilapidated Cloud Dragon sect. Subsequently, news about the Cloud Dragon sect was also sent back to the top forces and first-tier forces throughout the central region. It seems my guess was not wrong. The underworld is not as simple as we imagined. The underworld should have dispatched a great saint-level sword cultivator for the great battle on the Cloud Dragon sect side. Tianxian Holy Land. After receiving the intelligence sent back by the scout, Lu Jingtian spoke with a complex look in his eyes, but all this was within his expectations. After all, if the underworld dared to appear so openly in the central region, it meant that the underworld's strength was not weak. This time, this so-called Great Saint-level sword cultivator was the underworld's warning to the world. Instruct them, the Tianxian Holy Land must not antagonize the underworld. Perhaps the underworld may join forces with us to deal with the Heavenly Dao Alliance in the future. Then, Lu Jingtian looked towards the horizon with a deep gaze and spoke, but one could see a hint of worry in Lu Jingtian's eyes at this time. At the same time, those top forces also received similar news to what the Tianxian Holy Land received. Of course, because of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, these top forces currently had no intention of being enemies with the underworld. After all, the pressure the Heavenly Dao Alliance gave them was too strong, so their main goal now was on the Heavenly Dao Alliance, which is why they would not trouble the underworld. Of course, the most important thing is that the underworld's strength is so powerful, and the underworld has not provoked them, so they naturally will not provoke the underworld. Tianxian Holy Land St. Peak, Chu Chen's cultivation had now completely broken through to the King Completion realm, and he was not far from the next realm, True King realm. And at this time, he also received news from the outside world. I didn't expect that during my seclusion, a killer organization actually appeared in the central region, and the strength of this killer organization is not weak. Is it an organization hidden from the previous era? Chu Chun spoke with a solemn expression, and at the same time, his eyes showed a worried look. After all, the emergence of a top killer organization would naturally have a powerful impact on the entire central region. It seems I need to quickly improve my strength, and then bring Zhao Fan and the others to the central region. Otherwise, it might be difficult to protect Zhao Fan and the others in this chaotic world. Subsequently, his eyes began to become firm. His hard cultivation was mainly to protect his family. Now, the central region already had a Heavenly Dao Alliance that wanted to conquer the world. To deal with the Heavenly Dao Alliance, one needs stronger strength, and now another underworld organization has appeared, so Chu Chen's desire for strength is even stronger now. However, what he didn't know was that this killer organization, the underworld, was created by his own younger brother. Chapter 337, The Summoning continues. Sword Immortal Yiguqing. Because of the strength the underworld displayed this time, the forces in the central region acknowledged its existence, especially since the strength displayed by the underworld this time hinted at the presence of a great saint-level expert. Therefore, the top-tier forces did not plan to engage with the underworld, and the forces below the top tier did not have the ability to destroy the underworld, making the underworld's emergence inevitable. Of course, the most important factor was the Heavenly Dao Alliance's current suppression of these top-tier forces in the central region, which is why these top-tier forces ignored the underworld's appearance. After all, the emergence of the underworld could also draw the attention of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, allowing them to reap the benefits later. The Heavenly Dao Alliance naturally knew this situation, so they currently had no intention of attacking the underworld. If they were to truly make a move against the underworld, these top-tier forces in the central region might unite to fight the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After all, no one is a fool. Under these circumstances, the underworld was born. It must be said that the timing the underworld chose this time was extremely correct. Had the underworld not chosen a time when the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the top-tier forces were in mutual confrontation, the crisis it would have faced would likely have been much greater. Although the outside world rumored that the underworld possessed a great saint-level expert, only the underworld itself knew that its strongest cultivator was merely a saint-king-level cultivator. Although the strength of sword god Li Chungang and sword demon Du Bai had not reached the great saint realm, they could still fight a cultivator of the great saint realm relying on their sword Dao cultivation. As the underworld established a foothold in the central region, assassination missions from the cultivators in the central region also began to be placed with the underworld. After all, there was previously only the Blood Rain Tower, and it was naturally difficult for them to post missions there. But now, as long as they possess the underworld's token, they can post missions through it. The underworld can then complete this mission. Naturally, the underworld can also choose whether to complete it or not. Just like this, 2 months passed quietly. During these 2 months, the underworld completed thousands of assassinations in the central region. Among these assassinations, the most shocking was that the underworld once assassinated a Saint King level expert. While the assassination of a Saint King level expert shocked the central region, it also indirectly allowed the central region to recognize the true strength of the underworld. Just as the underworld successfully established a foothold in the central region, Chu Fan in the eastern region also received a significant amount of national destiny value. I didn't expect the national destiny value to multiply several times in just a few months. It seems dispatching a force into the central region was the correct decision. Chu Fan looked at the national destiny value inside his system space, a smile appearing on his face as he spoke. He hadn't expected the underworld to bring him so much national destiny value. Although he had intended for a force to enter the central region from the beginning, he never anticipated that this specific force could bring him such a large amount of national destiny value. However, Chu Fan had not yet thought of a purpose for this national destiny value, as the Great Xia Dynasty was currently focused on continuously improving its strength. And during these 2 months, the Great Xia Dynasty added 2 more Saint King level experts. One of them was Wang Chongyang, the underworld's manager, who had achieved a breakthrough to early stage Saint King during this period. The other was Lu Bu. His talent for cultivating was originally among the most outstanding in the entire Great Xia, so it was perfectly normal for him to achieve a breakthrough to early stage Saint King within these 2 months. More importantly, during these 2 months, Zhao Zilong and Yuan Qingdu were both close to achieving a breakthrough to the Saint King realm. Given 2 more months, they would definitely be able to achieve a breakthrough to the Saint King realm. Of course, at this time, they were not the only 2 in the Great Xia Dynasty close to the Saint King realm. The cultivation of Jiang Song and Pei Yuanqing was also not far from the Saint King realm, and Jiang Song might even achieve a breakthrough to the Saint King realm before Yuan Qingdu and Zhao Zilong. Chu Fan, who possesses the Innate Dao Body and cultivates the heaven-swallowing demonic art, also successfully entered the perfected Saint realm, though he was still somewhat short of achieving a breakthrough to the Saint King realm. Furthermore, over the past 2 months, Chu Fan had saved up 3 unlimited summoning cards. Since the system updated, Chu Fan discovered that the monthly unlimited summoning card could be saved, so he chose not to summon during these months, instead planning to keep these cards for summoning gradually. There are 3 unlimited summoning cards in the system space. Since the underworld only has 3 Saint King level cultivators, let's see what kind of surprise these 3 unlimited summoning cards can bring me. Chu Fan, who originally hadn't planned to summon so soon, began thinking about summoning after considering the situation with the underworld, so he looked at the 3 summoning cards in his system space with anticipation in his eyes. System, use these 3 unlimited summoning cards. After glancing at the 3 unlimited summoning cards, Chu Fan used them immediately without any hesitation. Ding! The unlimited summoning card was used successfully. Congratulations, host. You have successfully summoned the Saint King level figure sword Immortal Yiguqing. Congratulations, host. You have successfully obtained the Time Pagoda Connector. Congratulations, host. You have successfully summoned the Great Saint level figure God King Jiang Taishuda. Immediately after Chu Fan's voice fell, 3 cards appeared in his system space. Simultaneously, 3 figures emerged from these 3 cards. 2 were humanoid figures, and the third resembled Chain. I didn't expect to summon a Great Saint level figure this time. Besides this Great Saint level figure, I also summoned the Saint King level sword Immortal Yi Guqing. Chu Fan naturally understood Sword Immortal Yi Guqing very well, and he hadn't expected to summon the legendary Sword Immortal Yi Guqing this time. Does this mean next time he will summon Sword God? Sword Immortal was a unique existence in the wuxiao world. After all, how could an existence capable of being called a Sword Immortal be weak? What Chu Fan liked even more was the peerless sword technique Sword Immortal created himself. Immortal flying from beyond the heavens, which could be considered a top-tier sword technique in wuxiao novels. Even Sword God's A Sword from the West could only be compared to Sword Immortal's immortal flying from beyond the heavens. Sword Immortal ultimately fell at the hands of Sword God, primarily because Sword Immortal had lost all hope of living. It could be said that he sought death in that battle against Sword God, which is why Sword Immortal perished during his fight with Sword God. Chapter 338, The Heaven-Defying Time Pagoda Connector, Chu Fan's excitement. Moreover, the strength of the summoned Sword Immortal Yi Guqing had reached the Saint King realm. Sword Immortal in the Saint King realm would definitely be able to exert his strength to the maximum. Sword Immortal in the wuxiao novel world was not particularly powerful due to the limitations of the wuxiao world. Now, after being enhanced by the system, his strength is definitely even greater. Chu Fan then clicked on the introduction regarding Sword Immortal's cultivation, and the next second, he saw that Sword Immortal's cultivation had already reached the Saint King consummation realm. Chu Fan was already a bit surprised to summon Sword Immortal at the Saint King realm, but he never expected Sword Immortal's strength to actually reach the Saint King consummation realm. Judging by Sword Immortal's talent, it should not be particularly difficult for him to break through to the Great Saint realm. After all, how could the talent of Sword Immortal, who was able to create the peerless sword technique Immortal Flying from Beyond the Heavens, be poor? After finishing reading Sword Immortal's introduction, Chu Fan slowly turned his gaze towards the second summoning card. The second summoning card did not summon a Saint King or Great Saint level figure. Instead, it summoned a treasure, Time Pagoda Connector. After hearing this name, Chu Fan felt that it was extremely tacky, as if it were a name casually given by those high and mighty immortals. Thinking this, Chu Fan began to complain, but complaining aside, Chu Fan still started to look at the function of this so-called Time Pagoda Connector. However, when he saw the function and purpose of the Time Pagoda Connector, Chu Fan was completely stunned. This Time Pagoda Connector can create any space. Simply put, the characters Chu Fan summoned can enter the Time Pagoda anytime and anywhere. Even if Sword Demon Duga and others in the central region want to enter the Time Pagoda to cultivate, it only requires a single thought. From this, one can see how heaven-defying this so-called Time Pagoda Connector truly is. Moreover, even if the characters he summoned are being hunted down, they can enter the Time Pagoda to hide, which greatly reduces the risk of the summoned characters falling. At the same time, when these summoned characters have no tasks, they can directly enter the Time Pagoda to cultivate, and when they have tasks, they can go accept them. It can be said that with this item, Chu Fan has gained a cheating tool, and the strength of the characters he summoned will also rapidly increase. After all, at the beginning, the characters he summoned had their own tasks to perform, so they did not have much time to enter the Time Pagoda to cultivate. Of course, more importantly, if they wanted to come to the Time Pagoda to cultivate, they had to come to the Imperial Palace, but if they came to the Imperial Palace, they could not stick to their posts. This naturally reduced the time these summoned characters had for cultivation. Chu Fan had previously taken this into consideration, so he arranged for the summoned characters to cultivate in shifts, but now he no longer needs to consider this at all. Even Zhao Zilong and others guarding the city gate can enter the Time Pagoda to cultivate. As long as something happens at the city gate, Zhao Zilong and the others can exit the Time Pagoda. Although the Time Pagoda Connector summoned this time did not summon a person, it can be said that the function of this Time Pagoda Connector has far exceeded the effect of summoning a Great Saint or even a Quasi-Emperor Realm expert. In other words, even if the summoned character this time was a Great Saint level or Quasi-Emperor Realm expert, Chu Fan would not trade it. After all, such benefits are extremely rare. It can be said that with the Time Pagoda Connector, the characters he summoned will soon be able to break through to higher cultivation levels. Even the Quasi-Emperor Realm is easy to break through. After reading about this heaven-defying Time Pagoda Connector, it took Chu Fan quite a while to calm down the excitement in his heart. After all, having this item greatly increased the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty. Subsequently, Chu Fan immediately summoned the Time Pagoda Connector impatiently. After summoning the Time Pagoda Connector, Chu Fan seemed to sense something. At that moment, he could clearly feel that even if he wanted to enter the Time Pagoda, he could do so with just a single thought. Moreover, it wasn't just Chu Fan who sensed this scene. The characters he summoned also sensed this point. Li Chungang and Duga Bai also appeared directly in the Time Pagoda. They were very surprised by this occurrence. However, they quickly returned to the underworld in the central region. After trying it several times, the few people began to cultivate in the Time Pagoda. After all, they were once the top existences in their respective worlds, so upon coming to this world, they naturally wanted to improve their strength. At this moment, it wasn't just Dugu Chiobai and a few others who could enter the Time Pagoda. Any summon character could enter the Time Pagoda. This so-called Time Pagoda connector is actually so heaven-defying. However, this is another form of improvement for the Great Xia Dynasty. Perhaps, before long, the Great Xia Dynasty will have several great saint-level experts. Chu Fan smiled when he sensed that many of the characters he summoned had already entered the Time Pagoda to cultivate, as many of the characters he summoned had already reached the Saint King consummation realm. Judging by this cultivation speed, it wouldn't take them too long to break through to the Great Saint realm. In other words, it won't be too difficult for the characters Chu Fan summoned to break through to the Great Saint realm. By then, the Great Xia Dynasty will have true experts. After all, the top experts who usually take action in the central region are only at the Great Saint realm. Those Quasi-Emperor or even Great Emperor realm experts rarely appear. Quasi-Emperor realm experts might appear, but they will not show up unless their forces reach a life-or-death crisis. It can be said that Quasi-Emperor realm experts can be ignored. The premise, however, is not to provoke those top forces. Otherwise, if they are angered, the appearance of a Quasi-Emperor level expert would be troublesome. As for Great Emperor level experts, there's no need to worry at all. After all, Great Emperor level experts have not appeared for tens of thousands of years, so no one knows if there are still Great Emperor level experts in the world they inhabit. Even Chu Fan does not know if there are Great Emperor level experts in the world he is in, but Chu Fan himself has a guess. He believes that those Great Emperor level experts have either ascended to other worlds or have fallen due to the end of their lifespan. Only these two outcomes can explain why Great Emperor level experts have not appeared in this world. Of course, there is one more reason, which is that this world does not allow Great Emperor level experts to appear. It might be suppression by the rules. Chapter 339 God, King Jiang Taishu, Double Happiness Arrives. Ji Haoyue breaks through to the Great Sage Realm. What's more, those Great Emperor level experts are still very far from Chu Fan, so he naturally wouldn't consider those Great Emperor level experts at the moment. Of course, one of the most important reasons is that Chu Fan also has a temporary summon card, which grows in power as Chu Fan's strength increases. Now, Chu Fan believes that the cultivation of the characters summoned by this temporary summon card can definitely reach the Quasi-Emperor realm or even the Great Emperor realm. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally doesn't need to fear those so-called Great Emperor level experts. Next is the most powerful character summoned this time, God King Jiang Taishu, a Great Saint realm expert. After pondering for a moment, Chu Fan then looked at the last summon card in the system space. The character summoned by the last summon card was a Great Saint level expert. Moreover, it was the legendary God King Jiang Taishu. One must know that God King Jiang Taishu was the owner of the God King body, and he was also the God King who protected the growth of Emperor Yi Tian. He was the most talented God King in 4,000 years. Although he eventually perished in a great battle, his strength was not to be underestimated. After all, how could someone known as the God King of the Eastern Wastelands be weak? Furthermore, he was one of the strongest human race members of that era, a God King who protected the human race. Who in the world is worthy of white robes? Only I, God King Jiang Taishu. This phrase was incredibly popular in the world Chu Fan came from. Even people who rarely browse the internet had probably heard it. And this phrase also clearly summarized God King Jiang Taishu. From this phrase, one could see how powerful God King Jiang Taishu truly was. The cultivation of God King Jiang Taishu, summoned this time, had even reached the Great Sage Perfection realm, just one step away from the legendary Quasi-Emperor realm. God King Jiang Taishu, who had developed his God King body to its extreme, still had a chance to fight against Quasi-Emperor level cultivators. After all, he was the legendary God King Jiang Taishu. This meant that the Great Xia Dynasty, having summoned God King Jiang Taishu, now possessed a Great Sage Perfection realm foundation. Moreover, he also had the potential to fight against Quasi-Emperor level experts, so the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty had now been comprehensively enhanced. I didn't expect the cultivation of God King Jiang Taishu, summoned this time, to reach the Great Sage Perfection realm. I'm afraid he's not far from breaking through to the Quasi-Emperor realm. Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised to see God King Jiang Taishu's cultivation. But at this moment, a look of understanding appeared on his face because in that world, the fallen God King Jiang Taishu's cultivation was only at the Great Saint realm. Therefore, even at his peak, the summoned Jiang Taishu's cultivation was only at the Great Saint realm. So it was within his expectations that the cultivation of God King Jiang Taishu summoned into this world reached the great sage perfection realm. What's more, judging by God King Jiang Taishu's cultivation talent, it wouldn't take him long to break through to the quasi-emperor realm. At most 10 years, he could break through to the quasi-emperor realm. Now, the underworld finally has an expert to guard it. After summoning God King Jiang Taishu, Chu Fan had no intention of keeping him in the Great Xia Dynasty. Instead, he planned to have God King Jiang Taishu go to the underworld in the central region to guard it. After all, in the underworld, besides 2 late Saint King experts, there was only Wang Chongyang, a cultivator who had just broken through to the early stage Saint King, guarding it. He might have a chance to fight against a true Great Saint level expert. However, if they faced several Great Saint level cultivators, the underworld's current situation would indeed be difficult, which is why Chu Fan decided to have Jiang Taishu guard the underworld. By then, even if a quasi-emperor realm expert made a move, Chu Fan believed the underworld could safely get through it. As for the Great Xia Dynasty, it currently didn't need a Great Saint-level expert, as there were already many perfected Saint King realm cultivators in the Great Xia Dynasty. Moreover, in the next few months, the Great Xia Dynasty would not have any wars. What's more, Ji Hao Yue, who also possessed the God King body, was about to break through to the Great Saint realm. Ji Hao Yue had been in seclusion for several months to break through. However, at this moment, he was not far from breaking through. Breaking through from the Saint King realm to the Great Saint realm requires a certain amount of time. Even top prodigies need several months or even years to break through. Those older generation Saint King realm cultivators need decades or even centuries to break through to the Great Saint realm. Therefore, Ji Hao Yue's seclusion for these few months was also a normal situation. Subsequently, Chu Fan summoned the characters summoned this time. Furthermore, Chu Fan planned to have both Sword Immortal and God King Jiang Taishu, who were summoned this time, go to the underworld in the central region. Sword Immortal's strength had reached the perfected Saint King realm. Using immortal flying from beyond the heavens, he could even kill early-stage Great Sage experts. So his going to the underworld now was considered a top-tier fighting force. Of course, the most important reason was that Chu Fan had summoned the Time Pagoda Connector this time. So even if Sword Immortal went to the underworld in the central region, his cultivation speed would not decrease. What surprised Chu Fan even more was that just as he sent Sword Immortal and God King Jiang Taishu to the central region, terrifying fluctuations came from within the Time Pagoda. The spiritual chi within the Time Pagoda all converged towards one place, which was where Ji Hao Yue was in seclusion. Feeling this, everyone cultivating in the Time Pagoda looked towards Ji Hao Yue's seclusion spot. I didn't expect today to be a day of double happiness. Just after summoning a Great Saint-level expert, Ji Hao Yue is about to break through to the Great Saint realm. Feeling this, Chu Fan naturally appeared in the Time Pagoda instantly. Then, he, like the other summoned characters, looked towards Ji Hao Yue's seclusion spot. One could see that the spiritual chi in the Time Pagoda continuously flowed towards his seclusion, and at the same time, a terrifying aura was constantly emanating from Ji Hao Yue's seclusion spot. This aura was constantly increasing, and in just a moment, it became extremely terrifying. As the time it takes for an incense stick to burn past, this aura also rose to a level that made people feel suppressed. However, just as everyone felt this aura bringing them suppression, this aura receded like a flood. The next second, the spiritual chi in the entire Time Pagoda slowly dissipated. And from the place where the spiritual chi in the Time Pagoda had just rioted, a youthful man slowly walked out with a smile on his face. At this moment, his aura seemed to have entered a state of returning to simplicity, as if he were an ordinary person. However, due to his recent breakthrough, no matter how much his aura returned to simplicity, the mysterious aura on him at this moment was irresistible. Chapter 340 The heir to the Great Xia Dynasty is about to be born, terrifying phenomena. Ji Hao Yue's breakthrough to the Great Saint realm also added another Great Saint-level foundation to the Great Xia Dynasty. Because his breakthrough to the Great Saint realm happened within the Time Pagoda, there were no unusual phenomena in the outside world this time. If Ji Hao Yue had broken through to the Great Saint realm in the outside world, then perhaps the entire eastern region would have known that someone in the Great Xia Dynasty had broken through to the Great Saint realm. Of course, more importantly, the eastern region didn't know about the Great Saint realm. The highest realm they knew was only the Saint King realm. Moreover, the spiritual chi in the eastern region was not yet sufficient for cultivators to break through to the Great Saint realm, which was also why Ji Hao Yue chose to break through inside the Time Pagoda. Because the spiritual chi inside the Time Pagoda was sufficient for him to break through to the Great Saint realm. And as Ji Hao Yue broke through to the Great Saint realm, The cultivators at the Saint King Consummation Realm in the Great Xia Dynasty also began to cultivate diligently. Even the Wine Sword Immortal, who was summoned at the very beginning, was cultivating very seriously at this time. After all, his cultivation had already reached the Saint King Consummation Realm. Breaking through to the Great Saint Realm would naturally not be too difficult. Sword Immortal Yi Guqing had also been cultivating in the Time Pagoda during this period. In just half a month, he adapted to the cultivation of this world. After a month, Yuan Qingdu and Zhao Zilong, among others, successively broke through to the Saint King realm, adding several Saint King-level existences to the Great Xia Dynasty. 3 months after Jihao Yue's breakthrough to the Great Saint realm, Pei Yuanqing and others also broke through to the Saint King realm, and Luo Cheng also lived up to expectations by breaking through to the perfected Saint realm. He was getting closer and closer to the Saint King realm. As time slowly passed, Chu Fan's first child in this world was about to be born. However, before that, Ouyang Lingxue chose to bid farewell to Chu Fan and head to the Shuanghua Empire. After all, she had been in the Great Xia Dynasty for a long time. Moreover, Chu Fan later informed her of the news of the destruction of the former Ouyang family. Although Chu Fan didn't know if she would believe it, Chu Fan didn't care whether Ouyang Lingxue believed it or not. After all, this was the last thing Chu Fan could do for her. Chu Fan and she were not very familiar with each other, and being able to do this much for her was already considered Chu Fan's benevolence. A few more months quickly passed. Normally, a child gestation period is only 10 months, but the birth time of Chu Fan's offspring had far exceeded common sense. Now, a year and 2 months had passed, and only today was his child about to arrive in this world. And the Great Xia Dynasty was also very lively today. Chu Fan's grandfather also came to the Imperial Palace. Of course, by his side were Chu Fan's father, Chu Tianxiong, and Chu Fan's mother. Everyone looked eagerly at the room in front of them. Although the room in front of them didn't look particularly luxurious, the decoration style showed that this room far surpassed that of an ordinary prince's mansion. This was the Imperial Palace where Qing Miao resided. At this moment, Chu Fan was also waiting outside the room with a nervous expression. At this time, the surroundings of the Imperial Palace were also filled with many Saint King-level experts. They were guarding the entire Imperial Palace of the Great Xia Dynasty. It could be said that for the birth of his child this time, Chu Fan had mobilized all the Saint King-level experts of the Great Xia Dynasty. Of course, even Jihao Yue, the great Saint-level expert, was mobilized by Chu Fan. At this moment, Jihao Yue was standing on top of the Imperial Palace. No disturbance in the entire eastern region could escape his detection. "Brat, don't wander around in front of your old man." At this moment, Chu Tianxiong looked at Chu Fan, who was constantly moving in front of him, and helplessly patted Chu Fan's back. Then, with a helpless yet excited expression, he said, "Aren't I nervous?" After hearing Chu Tianxiong's words, Chu Fan also spoke helplessly, but one could see that his eyes were filled with excitement. After all, this was his first child in 2 lives, so how could he not be nervous? Chu Long and Jia Qiming stood happily behind, watching Chu Tianxiong and Chu Fan. They had already begun their retirement life. So now their greatest wish was to see their descendants grow up, and Chu Fan's growth had far exceeded their imagination. Therefore, their focus was now entirely on Chu Fan's child. It could be said that as long as Chu Fan's child was born, he would definitely be born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Not only were they simply the imperial princes and princesses of the Great Xia Dynasty, but they were also the offspring of Chu Fan, the cheat. It could be said that in the future, they would definitely be the most noble people in the entire world. Just as everyone was anticipating, a terrifying change suddenly began to occur in the sky. And this change was directly above the Great Xia Dynasty. A silver-white giant dragon suddenly appeared in the clear sky. This silver-white giant dragon was constantly circling above the imperial palace of the Great Xia Dynasty. At the same time, around this silver-white giant dragon, a series of dragon roars could be heard. This change instantly attracted the attention of everyone present. Even Jihao Yue, who was standing above the imperial palace, looked towards the silver-white giant dragon in the sky. A natural phenomenon. The Little Highness's future achievements will definitely not be ordinary. Looking at the unusual phenomenon in the sky, a look of excitement appeared in Jihao Yue's eyes. After all, for his family's Little Highness, who was about to be born, to have such a terrifying phenomenon, it meant that his Little Highness's talent had far exceeded the scope of a genius. A natural phenomenon. It seems my Chu Fan's offspring will be a unique existence between heaven and earth. Chu Fan naturally understood where the unusual phenomenon in the sky came from. So, with excitement in his eyes, he looked into the room. At this moment, he seemed to have already seen his offspring, who was born with an unusual phenomenon. Is this the legendary phenomenon that only peerless prodigies possess when they are born? Ha ha, I never thought my grandson, Chu Tianxiong, would possess such a terrifying phenomenon. Even Chu Tianxiong, who was by Chu Fan's side, stared at the sky with an incredible expression. At the same time, a look of excitement was on his face. Then, he burst into laughter. Chu Long also stroked his long-gone beard excitedly, looking at the sky. After all, this was the offspring of his most beloved grandson, and such a change naturally made him happy. Moreover, this was the offspring of their Chu family. With such a natural phenomenon, his future growth would definitely exceed their imagination. At this moment, all the experts of the Great Xia dynasty focused their gaze on this point, and their eyes were filled with hope and excitement. Chapter 341: The Birth of the First Offspring, True Dragon Holy Body. At this moment, the cultivators inside Chang'an City all turned their gaze toward the imperial palace. Simultaneously, the cultivators and common folk within Chang'an City knelt toward the imperial palace, because the celestial phenomenon above the palace had far exceeded their imagination. They had never witnessed such a phenomenon before. I remember today is the day the emperor's descendant is born. It seems our Great Xia dynasty will see the emergence of another peerless prodigy. Yes, it appears the talent of our Great Xia dynasty's Little Highness absolutely surpasses the understanding of all of us. After all, possessing such a terrifying phenomenon means the Little Highness's talent for cultivation is definitely unprecedented. Perhaps in the future, the Great Xia dynasty will reach an even higher level under the leadership of the Little Highness. Our Great Xia dynasty has already reached a higher level under the emperor's leadership. The future Little Highness will probably only need to guard the empire the emperor established for him. That's right. The emperor was originally the Great Xia dynasty's top prodigy, and now he has established the Great Xia dynasty, unifying the entire eastern region. Thus, the emperor's talent is naturally beyond doubt. I really want to see just how powerful the Little Highness's talent is. At this time, the cultivators in Chang'an City began discussing the matter. They knew from the beginning that today was the day the Great Xia dynasty's Little Highness was to be born in Chang'an City. After all, Chu Fan did not choose to hide this from the cultivators of Chang'an City. Furthermore, Chu Fan had made the entire Chang'an City impenetrable, so the cultivators of Chang'an City naturally knew what was going to happen today. However, they had not expected such a terrifying phenomenon to occur when their Little Highness was born. Nevertheless, at this moment, the faces of these cultivators in Chang'an City were filled with excitement, as the stronger their Little Highness's talent, the happier they felt. The phenomenon in Chang'an City was not only seen by the cultivators there. Even other forces in the far-off eastern region saw it. At this moment, Feng Zhan of the Feng family looked at the terrifying phenomenon in the sky, a hint of excitement showing in his eyes. As Chu Fan's maternal grandfather, he naturally knew that today was the day Chu Fan's descendant was born. Therefore, the phenomenon over Chang'an City must have been caused by the birth of Chu Fan's descendant. It seems my grandson's descendant is extraordinary. Following this, Feng Zhan looked at the phenomenon in the sky with excitement in his eyes, and at the same time, he looked eagerly toward Chang'an City. At this moment, he also wanted to go to Chang'an City to see what astonishing talent his soon-to-be-born great-grandson possessed. At this moment, the most shocked was none other than the Wuji sect. After all, the Wuji sect came from outside the eastern region, so they naturally knew that peerless prodigies had phenomena accompany their birth. But they had not expected the phenomenon accompanying the birth of their emperor's descendant to be so terrifying. Even the phenomena accompanying the birth of peerless prodigies in the southern region, where they used to reside, were not this frightening. It seems our Great Xia dynasty has finally produced a peerless prodigy. I fear his talent has long surpassed those so-called supreme prodigies of the past. The sect master of the Wuji sect muttered to himself while looking toward Chang'an City, his eyes clearly showing excitement. The Wuji sect has now completely pledged allegiance to the Great Xia dynasty, so they were naturally happy that a peerless prodigy was born here in the Great Xia dynasty. At this moment, the grand elders of the Wuji sect around him also looked excitedly toward Chang'an City. They had not expected the Great Xia dynasty's Little Highness to be able to generate such a terrifying phenomenon. Next, let us head to Chang'an City to congratulate the emperor and celebrate the Little Highness's birthday. Afterward, a grand elder waved his hand and spoke, his face clearly showing intense excitement. The others all nodded upon hearing his words, then looked toward Chang'an City with excitement and anticipation in their eyes. Just as everyone's attention was focused on Chang'an City, the silver-white giant dragon above Chang'an City slowly began to change. The silver-white light emanating from its body slowly gathered into a ball of light, and then a silver-white pillar of light shot out from the body of the silver dragon. This silver-white pillar of light connected directly from the silver dragon's body down to the room below. Then, the silver dragon in the sky seemed to have found its direction and headed straight toward the pillar of light. In the next second, the silver dragon in the sky completely merged into the pillar of light. And the pillar of light also entered the room directly. As the silver dragon vanished from the sky, the sound of a baby crying came from inside the room. Wah, wah, wah. Chu Fan and the others instantly grew excited upon hearing the sound of the baby crying, but they anxiously waited outside the room for news of the situation inside. The next second, a beautiful woman quickly walked out of the room, holding a baby wrapped in a golden cloth strip. However, one could see silver-white light radiating from the baby's body, making the child look extremely lively. More importantly, there was a terrifying pressure emanating from the child, but this terrifying pressure quickly vanished. In its place was a lifelike silver dragon mark on the child's forehead, making the baby look even more lively. System, help me investigate this little one's physique. After looking at the child, Chu Tianxiong hurriedly pushed Chu Fan aside and stepped forward to hug the baby. The helpless Chu Fan then began asking the system about this little one's physique. Ding, the host descendant possesses the ancient top-tier physique, the true dragon sacred body. Cultivating it to the major achievement realm allows one to fight against powerhouses of the great emperor realm. Just as Chu Fan finished speaking, the system's voice rang out in his mind. Chu Fan was very surprised after hearing the system's words. He had not expected his descendant to possess the legendary true dragon sacred body. Although the true dragon sacred body was not as famous as the desolate ancient sacred body, its function was not inferior to the desolate ancient sacred body. After all, the true dragon sacred body was also known for its strength. Just as Chu Fan felt surprised and astonished, the silver-white light radiating from the little one's body continuously spread, and soon the aura surrounding the little one began to grow steadily. His realm continuously increased as if he was cheating. In just a few breaths, the aura around him had already reached the divine power realm. Moreover, the aura of the little one, who had reached the divine power realm, did not stop increasing. Instead, he continuously absorbed the surrounding spiritual energy. This scene instantly stunned Chu Tianxiong and the others. Chapter 342. Born at the Cave Heaven Realm, Phoenix Phenomenon appears again. What was even more astonishing was that the terrifying chi surrounding the little one was continuously absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy. This instantly caused the surrounding spiritual energy to become turbulent. Chu Fan hadn't anticipated this sight either, but he quickly reacted, waving his hand rapidly. A silver-white fruit then appeared in his palm. The fruit contained terrifying spiritual power, and simultaneously, the phantom of a flood dragon was roaring incessantly within it. Gazing at the fruit in his hand, Chu Fan lightly tapped it. The next second, the flood dragon phantom inside the fruit instantly vanished. Having completed this, Chu Fan slowly placed the silver-white fruit above the little one's head. Subsequently, the power emanating from the little one continuously absorbed the spiritual energy contained within the silver-white fruit. This silver-white fruit was precisely the flood dragon fruit that Chu Fan had acquired by chance previously. It was a fruit capable of giving a flood dragon a chance to transform into a true dragon. Crucially, the spiritual energy contained within this fruit could allow an average flood dragon prodigy to achieve a breakthrough of 2 major realms. Moreover, it gave them the opportunity to transform into a dragon. However, since his little one possessed the true dragon sacred body, absorbing this flood dragon fruit was effortless for him. As the spiritual energy within the flood dragon fruit was continuously absorbed by the little one, the chi on his body began to surge steadily. Ultimately, his realm stabilized at the Grotto Heaven realm. At this point, the little one appeared even more vibrant. I never expected this little one's cultivation base to reach a level that is difficult for ordinary people to attain right after birth. Even when I was the Grand Marshal, my cultivation was only at this level. Chu Tianxiong watched the little one, whose chi was stable, with a look of emotion on his face. Although Chu Tianxiong's cultivation had already reached the King realm now, but when he was the Northern region's Grand Marshal, his cultivation was only the Grotto Heaven realm. Yet his grandson's cultivation had reached the level he needed decades of cultivating to achieve right at his birth, instantly filling him with emotion. Isn't it normal for this great-grandson to have this strength? After all, you were quite ordinary when you were born, but when my great-grandson was born, the entire sky was filled with phenomena. After hearing Chu Tianxiong's words, Chu Long slowly walked up to look at the little one, then gave Chu Tianxiong a look of disdain. A wronged expression appeared on Chu Tianxiong's face as he saw Chu Long looking at him with disdain. He hadn't expected that Chu Fan's birth had stolen his fatherly love, and now that the little one was born, his fatherly love was utterly non-existent. Chu Fan, go quickly and check on Qingyao. She needs you the most right now. Feng Shiran looked at the aggrieved expression on her husband's face and rubbed her forehead helplessly, but she still slowly approached Chu Fan and spoke to him. Regarding the little one, Chu Fan probably wouldn't have the chance to interact with him immediately, so she figured it was better to let her son tend to his wife. Upon hearing his mother's words, Chu Fan came to his senses. He cupped his hands toward his mother, then prepared to walk toward the room. But just at this moment, a terrifying phenomenon appeared in the sky once again. The sky, which had originally been clear and boundless, was suddenly filled with another fiery red phenomenon. And as this fiery red residual light appeared, the next second, a phoenix flew out from within this fiery red radiance. This phoenix continuously flapped its wings in the sky, as if undergoing nirvana rebirth. Simultaneously, the terrifying flames surrounding the phoenix instantly engulfed the entire sky. The most crucial detail, of course, was the fiery red beam of light below the phoenix, connecting it directly to the room. I have another great-grandson about to be born. Chu Long, who had been happily watching the little one, now stared at the phenomenon in the sky with a look of shock. At this moment, he naturally understood the situation. Judging by the current developments, he should have another great-grandchild about to be born. Looking at this phoenix phenomenon in the sky, the next one born should be a granddaughter, right? I never thought that I, Chu Tianxiong, would gain both a granddaughter and a grandson in a single day, and both are such terrifying peerless prodigies. Chu Tianxiong, holding the little one, laughed heartily while looking at the phenomenon in the sky. The excitement on his face was impossible to conceal. Even Feng Shiran, who was beside him, was momentarily stunned, but she quickly turned her gaze toward the sky as well. Why can't it be a grandson? Chu Long rolled his eyes at Chu Tianxiong after hearing his words, though it was evident that a smile of excitement was plastered across his face. Just now, when the little one was born, a silver dragon appeared in the sky, and now a phoenix appears in the sky. Doesn't that mean this pair of my grandchildren are dragon phoenix twins? After hearing Chu Long's words, Chu Tianxiong immediately spoke. It was obvious that he was no longer feeling wronged as he had earlier, but was extremely happy instead. Of course, whatever grievance Chu Tianxiong felt was always immediately apparent. Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised after hearing Chu Long's words. He hadn't expected that dragon phoenix twins in this world were conceived in this manner. After all, he had never heard of the concept of dragon phoenix twins existing in this world. But now, his pair of children truly seemed to be the legendary dragon phoenix twins. As for why he felt that his other child was a daughter, one would truly underestimate the perception of a cultivator at the perfected saint realm. At this moment, Chu Fan had already sensed that the child about to be born was a daughter. Previously, he hadn't used his divine sense to probe the child in Qing Yao's womb, mainly because he was afraid of affecting the child's growth. But now that his son had already been born, and his daughter was on the verge of birth, he had naturally already sensed his daughter's aura. The phenomenon appearing in the sky once again shocked everyone. The common people and cultivators of Chang'an City once again kneeled toward the direction of the imperial palace. They hadn't expected the phenomenon brought by their little highness to be so terrifying, but at this point they also guessed that two little highnesses must have been born. This instantly caused the common people and cultivators of Chang'an City to cheer wildly. Meanwhile, the sect master and grand elder of the Wuji sect were originally on their way to Chang'an City, but upon seeing another phenomenon appear in the sky, they reacted. The few individuals exchanged glances and returned to the Wuji sect. The reason they returned to the Wuji sect was simple. They needed to prepare a gift for their little highness. After all, they had only prepared one gift previously, but now they needed to prepare two gifts. Chapter 343, Daughter's Birth, Phoenix Sacred Body, Cave Heaven Realm. At this moment, the happiest person was undoubtedly Chu Fan, as he now had both a son and a daughter. Moreover, regardless of whether it was the son or the daughter, they were born with celestial phenomena, meaning their future achievements would not be weak. Under the excited gazes of the crowd, the phoenix in the sky slowly ascended, then transformed into a fiery red light and vanished between heaven and earth. Following the disappearance of the phoenix, the sound of a baby crying was once again heard inside the room. As this crying sound rang out, Chu Fan knew his daughter had been born. Chu Fan then waited anxiously outside the room for his daughter. After only a few seconds, the beautiful woman from before reappeared in front of Chu Fan, holding a baby wrapped in golden cloth. At this time, the baby was still constantly shrouded by fiery red light, making the infant appear even more extraordinary. When Chu Fan saw this baby, he felt an immediate sense of intimacy. This was the connection between bloodlines. Is this my little great-granddaughter? However, before Chu Fan could take the baby into his arms, Chu Long, who was behind him, couldn't help but step forward and embrace the infant. Chu Fan, who had originally wanted to hold his own child, missed the chance once again. In truth, he couldn't blame Chu Long. At the beginning, he had wanted to hold his own grandson, but was beaten to it by that fellow, Chu Tianxiong. Now that his great-granddaughter was born, he naturally had to embrace her with the fastest speed possible. The instant Chu Long received the baby girl, a lifelike phoenix appeared on her forehead, and at the same time, a terrifying aura radiated from the infant. This aura continued to absorb the surrounding spiritual energy. Soon, the aura surrounding the baby girl began to slowly increase, though her increase was not as rapid as the baby boy's had been. Instead, it seemed like she was undergoing nirvana. However, after a short while, the aura surrounding the baby girl stabilized at the Grotto Heaven realm. But the aura surrounding the baby girl this time was clearly not as powerful as the boy's aura. After all, Chu Fan did not have any phoenix fruit or fruit from the Phoenix clan this time. So the baby girl's aura was naturally not as strong as the baby boy's aura, who had absorbed the Flood Dragon fruit. Little one, I didn't expect you could break through to the Grotto Heaven realm without absorbing a spirit fruit. However, your father will compensate you later. Chu Fan was somewhat surprised to see the little one break through to the Grotto Heaven realm relying solely on her own ability. But when he thought about how he hadn't helped the little one, he felt a little ashamed. So Chu Fan decided to compensate the little one in a few days. At this moment, the little one seemed to understand Chu Fan's words, as a smile instantly appeared on her face, a smile that was incredibly heartwarming. Even Chu Long, who was holding the baby girl, was amused and burst into hearty laughter. Chu Long hadn't been this happy in a very long time. Although he had always deeply cherished Chu Fan, his most important duty had been managing the prince of Zhenbai's estate. Back then, he was constantly on tenterhooks, worried that the great Yin dynasty would move against the prince of Zhenbai's estate, making it extremely difficult to protect his grandson. But now, they were the masters of the great Xia dynasty, and both his great-grandson and great-granddaughter had been born, so all of Chu Long's previous worries vanished completely. On the other side, Chu Tianxiong was happily holding the baby boy. At this moment, he had completely withdrawn the aura of his former position as Grand Marshal. He had become extremely cautious. Even though he knew the child in his arms had already reached the Grotto Heaven realm, he was still incredibly careful, as if afraid of hurting the child with too much force. Chu Fan smiled as he looked at the harmonious scene outside, and then he slowly walked toward the room. Soon, Chu Fan entered the room. Qing Niao was lying on the bed, her face pale, and Luo Tianyi was by her side. Qing Niao and Luo Tianyi had a very close relationship, so Luo Tianyi took on the task of caring for Qing Niao this time. When Qing Niao was about to give birth, Chu Fan's mother, Feng Shiran, originally wanted to come in and look after her, but Qing Niao adamantly refused, so the person caring for her ultimately became Luo Tianyi. "Husband, you're here." Luo Tianyi looked at Chu Fan with gentle eyes after he entered and spoke, though a hint of envy could be seen in her gaze. "You've worked hard." Chu Fan gently held Luo Tianyi's hand and spoke to her, but he still led Luo Tianyi slowly toward the bedside. The one who worked hard was elder sister Qing Niao, giving birth to a pair of twins for her husband. Moreover, when those two little ones were born, the entire room emitted terrifying celestial phenomena. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Luo Tianyi slowly turned her gaze toward Qing Niao on the bed, and then she spoke to Chu Fan with a curious look on her face. "Those two little ones are indeed extraordinary. The baby boy possesses the true dragon sacred body, and the baby girl possesses the phoenix sacred body. The moment those two little ones were born, their cultivation had already reached the Grotto Heaven realm." Chu Fan nodded upon hearing Luo Tianyi's words. Then he slowly stroked Luo Tianyi's head and spoke again. However, after speaking, a look of pride appeared on Chu Fan's face. After all, having a daughter and son with such terrifying aptitude naturally excited him. They reached the Grotto Heaven realm right after birth. Then their future achievements probably won't be lower than the Saint King realm. Luo Tianyi was completely stunned after hearing Chu Fan's words. She hadn't expected those two little ones to be so extraordinary. Their cultivation had reached the Grotto Heaven realm immediately upon birth. One must know that the Grotto Heaven realm was a realm she once dared not even imagine. Although Luo Tianyi had now breakthrough to the King realm, the news that the babies reached the Grotto Heaven realm right after birth still shocked her somewhat. Furthermore, the two little ones possessed terrifying physiques. In fact, this was also due to Chu Fan and Qing Niao having high cultivation levels. Otherwise, if Chu Fan and Qing Niao's cultivation had only been at the Grotto Heaven or Spirit roaming realm, then, even if those two little ones possessed the Phoenix Sacred Body and the True Dragon Sacred Body, neither Sacred Body would have been able to undergo awakening when they were born. let alone having their cultivation reach the grotto heaven realm upon birth. Take Chu Fan's older brother, Chu Chun, for example. He was born with a natural supreme bone, but because Chu Tianxiong and Feng Shiran's cultivation levels were not high, his supreme bone failed to undergo awakening. This is also why he had no cultivation when he was born. Of course, even without the awakening of his supreme bone, his speed of cultivation far surpassed Chu Fan's former pace. Chapter 344: The Role of National Fortune. Naming Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran. After Chu Fan finished speaking, he arrived by Qingyao's side. At this moment, Qingyao's face was completely drained of color. Although her cultivation had reached the entering saint realm, the two little ones had completely absorbed the spiritual power within her body during their birth. Therefore, the spiritual power throughout Qingyao's body was extremely scattered, making her look as if she had just recovered from severe illness. This was also why ordinary cultivators sometimes perished after giving birth to peerless prodigies. Chu Fan looked at Qingyao on the bed, a trace of heartache appearing on his face, and then he slowly walked forward, extending his hand toward Qingyao's forehead. As his finger rested on Qingyao's forehead, the golden qi within Chu Fan's body continuously surged into Qingyao's body. As this golden qi continuously entered Qingyao's body, the paleness on her face slowly receded, and simultaneously, the scattered aura around Qingyao gradually stabilized. Moments later, Qingyao's pale complexion began to turn rosy. At the same time, the scattered aura around her completely stabilized, and she was not far from a breakthrough to the next realm. However, a hint of pallor appeared at the corner of Chu Fan's mouth, but he quickly concealed the paleness. This time, what he transferred into Qingyao's body was the national destiny of the Great Xia Dynasty. As the emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty, Chu Fan naturally controlled its national destiny, and the amount he just transferred to Qingyao was enough to allow a person to make a breakthrough from the perfected saint realm to the saint king realm. However, cultivation enhanced by national destiny was considered inferior. Otherwise, the national destiny of the Great Xia Dynasty that Chu Fan could currently mobilize would be enough to allow everyone he summoned to achieve a breakthrough to the saint king realm. But if they were forcefully allowed to make a breakthrough using national destiny, it would be extremely difficult for them to reach higher realms in the future. Furthermore, if the entire national destiny of the Great Xia Dynasty were used up, the Great Xia Dynasty would suffer continuous calamities, which was certainly not what Chu Fan wished to see. Husband, where are our children? Qingyao, having recovered, slowly woke up at this moment. She looked at Chu Fan and asked happily, having finally had her own children after coming to this world, thus a joyful expression naturally adorned Qingyao's face. They're with my grandfather and the others. Once they are finished playing with them, they will bring them in to see you. Upon hearing Qingyao's words, Chu Fan spoke gently to her, and then began examining her body to see how great the toll on Qingyao had been this time. After examining Qingyao's body, Chu Fan found that she was fine. It seemed to be the effect of the national destiny he had just transferred. Time slowly passed, and in the blink of an eye, night arrived. By this time, Qingyao was able to get out of bed and move around, and the imperial palace was currently bustling with activity. Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong were seen happily laughing at the banquet while holding Chu Fan's two newborn children. Chu Long, in particular, was constantly looking for things to give to his little great-granddaughter. As for the peak experts in the imperial palace, they were also present at the banquet, though their eyes occasionally drifted toward their two little highnesses. Now that the two little ones have been born, it is time to name them. Feng Shiran slowly approached Chu Fan and said to him, now that her two grandchildren had been born, she naturally wanted Chu Fan to give them names. Her voice was not concealed at all, so Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong, who were holding the two little ones, heard her words, and both men looked up toward Chu Fan. After hearing his mother's words, Chu Fan slowly turned his gaze toward Qingyao and Luo Tianyi beside him, and then he nodded to both Qingyao and Luo Tianyi. Only then did he slowly step forward and speak softly to the crowd. We had already written down their names before the two little ones were born. We just hadn't expected them to be dragon and phoenix twins, but we have names ready for both little ones. After Chu Fan finished speaking, he slowly walked over to Chu Tianxiong's side, looked at his son, and slowly spoke again. At the time, we decided if it was a son, he would be named Chu Wushuang. I hope he can be peerlessly unmatched, hence the name Wushuang, unmatched. Chu Wushuang. This name is indeed suitable for my grandson. I also believe my grandson will be unmatched in the world in the future. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Chu Tianxiong looked happily at the little one in his arms. Although the name Chu Wushuang was indeed a bit ostentatious, the Great Xia Dynasty had no need to fear other powers now. After all, the Great Xia Dynasty was now the master of the entire eastern region. Chu Long and the others also nodded silently after hearing Chu Fan's words. The name Chu Wushuang was indeed excellent, and it even showed Chu Fan's high expectations for his son. The figures summoned by Chu Fan were extremely excited at this moment. If their little highness truly became unmatched in the world in the future, they would naturally be delighted. As for this little girl, she will be named Chu Yanran. I hope she can simply grow up happily under Wu Shuang's care. After Chu Fan finished speaking, he slowly turned his gaze toward his daughter, and then he spoke with a gentle smile on his face. Although his expectations for his son were very high, he did not have too many expectations for his daughter. Chu Fan only hoped that his daughter could grow up happily. Ha ha, good. Then from now on, you will be called Little Yanran. Chu Long burst out laughing after hearing Chu Fan's words, and then he gently played with Little Yanran in his arms. Clearly, Chu Long had fully approved of the name Chu Yanran at this moment. Feng Shiran also watched her granddaughter and grandson with a gentle smile at this time. Since the two little ones have been safely born, let's hold their birth ceremony in Chang'an City 1 month from now. Just as everyone was smiling happily, Jia Qiming spoke with a benevolent smile, and after speaking, he looked at little Yanran in Chu Long's arms with a beaming face. Indeed, that should be done. It is time for the people of the Great Xia Dynasty to meet their little highness and little princess. Chu Long nodded after hearing his words, and then slowly looked toward Chu Fan and spoke. Chapter 345. A mysterious powerful figure appears in Chang'an City. Chu Fan speculation. Time passed bit by bit. In this month, the entire Great Xia Dynasty was flourishing. Of course, news about the birth of the Great Xia Dynasty's princess and little highness also spread throughout the Great Xia Dynasty. At the same time, the unusual phenomenon above Chang'an City was also exaggerated by the Great Xia Dynasty. Some even said that the Great Xia Dynasty's princess and little highness were immortals reincarnated from the heavens. But all of this did not affect their worship of the Great Xia Dynasty's princess and little highness. At the same time, they also knew that their own little highness and princess were peerless prodigies. And in this month, the forces from the eastern region also rushed towards Chang'an. Now the Great Xia Dynasty was the overlord of the entire eastern region, so these forces naturally rushed over impatiently when this overlord had a little princess and little highness. Besides wanting to see the two little princesses and little highnesses who caused the unusual phenomena, they mostly wanted to enter the Great Xia Dynasty's interior. After all, they knew when the Great Xia Dynasty recruited an army, but with so many cultivators in the entire eastern region, they naturally had no chance to join the army. And this time, the birth of the little highness and little princess gave them an opportunity. If the gifts they sent could make the little highness and little princess happy, perhaps they could join the Great Xia Dynasty's army. After all, the rapid growth of the Great Xia Dynasty's army had already far surpassed their sex. Just as everyone was rushing to Chang'an City, a mysterious old man appeared outside Chang'an City. The old man carried a mysterious aura. However, the surrounding cultivators treated the old man as an ordinary person because the old man had no aura at all, as if he was truly just an ordinary person. I never thought that such a place with such thin spiritual chi would give birth to a force like the Great Xia Dynasty. And in this city, there's even a great saint and so many saint kings. Such strength could even be considered a minor first-rate force in the central region. The old man slowly raised his head and looked at Chang'an City. Then he murmured towards Chang'an City. If anyone had heard the old man's words, they would have been greatly astonished. The old man only glanced at Chang'an City and saw through all the top experts within Chang'an City. Such strength had already far exceeded human imagination. However, the two little ones born this time have the most top-tier talent in the entire continent. I'll go see if I can take these two little ones as disciples. Then, the old man's figure flashed quickly, and in the next second his figure instantly disappeared from where he stood, as if he had never appeared. However, his purpose this time was to go towards Chu Fan's two little ones. Just after the old man left, a young man in a white robe appeared at the old man's previous location. The young man looked at the old man's previous location with a solemn expression. Then, the young man quickly turned into a ray of light and disappeared from where he was, then appeared in the imperial palace. At this time, the imperial palace was very lively, and the two little ones had also grown a lot in this month. At this moment, they were in the arms of Qing Yao and Luo Qiani, while Chu Fan was seated at the head, and below were the Great Xia Dynasty's Saint King level cultivators. However, some of the Saint King level cultivators were currently guarding the gates of Chang'an City and the Imperial Palace, so not all of Chang'an City's Saint King level experts were at the banquet. And on a huge stone table in front of Chu Fan and the others were many items. Among these were spirit treasures that made the world envious and cultivation techniques and martial skills that the world could not obtain. These were all gathered by the Saint King level experts of Chang'an City, and among these gifts were those sent by Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu and others. Because they had no gifts to send, it can be said that this time they scoured the entire eastern region. All the top-tier treasures of the Eastern region were collected by these Saint King-level experts of Chang'an City. Then all these treasures were placed on the table in front of them. In addition to the treasures collected by Zhao Zilong and the other summon characters, there were also gifts from the Wuji Sect's Sect Master and Grand Elder and others. Of course, besides the Wuji Sect's Sect Master and Grand Elder, there were also things sent by other Sect Masters or Grand Elders from the Eastern region, but the things they sent were far inferior to what Zhao Zilong's people collected. At this time, besides the Great Xia Dynasty's top experts, Chu Fan's close relatives were also at the banquet, such as his maternal grandfather, uncles, and others. Just as smiles filled everyone's faces, the young man who had just appeared outside the city gate, who was Ji Haoyue, the strongest cultivator in the Great Xia Dynasty at this moment, appeared before Chu Fan. This was also because Jiang Taishi was not in the Great Xia Dynasty, so Ji Haoyue was the strongest cultivator in the Great Xia Dynasty at this time. When Ji Haoyue appeared before Chu Fan, the solemn expression on his face slowly receded, but his fleeting solemnity was naturally noticed by Chu Fan. So he transmitted his voice to Ji Haoyue, asking what happened. Reporting to the emperor, a peerless expert was suspected to have been found outside the gates of Chang'an City just now. But when I arrived there, that aura had completely disappeared. However, Haoyue can be certain that his cultivation is definitely not weaker than mine. Ji Haoyue also transmitted his voice to Chu Fan after hearing Chu Fan's words. His voice carried a hint of worry, although he had now broken through to the Great Saint Realm. However, the aura just now made him feel immense pressure. At the same time, he also did not want a major battle with such an expert to occur in Chang'an City of the Great Xia Dynasty. Otherwise, it might affect the entire Great Xia Dynasty. Since he hasn't appeared, then let's not make a fuss for now, and I also have means to deal with him. Chu Fan did not expect that a peerless expert would appear outside Chang'an City this time, but with his temporary summoning card, he was not afraid of this top expert. However, a solemn expression could be seen on Chu Fan's face. This peerless expert who appeared outside Chang'an City was probably attracted by the unusual phenomena caused by his son and daughter. If that were truly the case, then his temporary summoning card might really have to be used this time. He would not watch his son and daughter be taken away by this so-called peerless expert. Although the solemn expression on Chu Fan's face was only fleeting, the observant Feng Shiran naturally also saw the expression on her son's face. It could be said that from the moment Ji Haoyue entered, she had been paying attention to Ji Haoyue. After all, he was the strongest figure in the Great Xia Dynasty, and connecting this with Chu Fan's expression, a hint of unease also appeared in her heart. Chapter 346, Chu Fan's Vigilance, Guarding at Night. Following this, Chu Fan did not make a fuss. Instead, he continued celebrating his children's birthday. However, Chu Fan instructed Ji Haoyue to guard his two children. Although Ji Haoyue might not be a match for this mysterious expert, yet, as a great saint-level expert, if this mysterious expert were to appear here, Ji Haoyue would definitely detect him. That would give Chu Fan a chance to react. Otherwise, if he didn't even have a chance to react, then the character summoned by his temporary summoning card would naturally be useless. Unfortunately, it would take some time for Jiang Taishu to revert. Otherwise, Chu Fan would have already recalled it by now. After all, Jiang Taishu's cultivation had already reached the Great Sage Perfection realm. So even if the newcomer's cultivation had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm, Jiang Taishu could still fight him. Time passed slowly like this, flowing gently, while Chu Long and Chu Tianxiong excitedly accompanied the two little ones. Soon, the banquet concluded. The experts from the Eastern Domain factions also began to leave one after another. However, the cultivation of these so-called experts was at most the Dharma aspect realm, and perhaps only one or two King realm cultivators might appear among the many cultivators present. Chu Fan did not choose to recruit troops and horses at this time. If this were earlier, he might have chosen to recruit. But now that a mysterious expert had appeared in Chang'an City, his attention was entirely focused on this mysterious expert. Right after the banquet ended, Chu Fan and Qing Yao, along with a few others, brought the two little ones to the Imperial Palace main hall. The two little ones were still laughing happily at this moment. They were more spirited than ordinary children, and furthermore, their cultivation had already reached the Grotto Heaven realm, meaning the two little ones could stay awake even without sleeping. This time, Chu Fan kept Ji Haoyue, a great saint-level cultivator, by his side, while the Imperial Palace was guarded by Wine Sword Immortal and several other Saint King-level experts. No matter how powerful the cultivation of this mysterious expert was, he could not escape the eyes of so many people. Moreover, Ji Haoyue was now fully focused on the two little ones. It could be said that no disturbance, however slight, could escape his notice. Time quickly moved into the evening, and Chu Fan still hadn't encountered the mysterious expert, making him wonder if the expert was truly targeting the two little ones. If the mysterious expert was truly just passing through Chang'an City, that would be excellent news for Chu Fan. However, Chu Fan feared that he had come specifically for the two little ones. After all, it's not the theft one fears, but the constant coveting. As the bright moon slowly rose in the sky, Chu Fan remained in the two little ones' room, unwilling to leave. Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi naturally noticed that Chu Fan was acting strangely, and a look of worry appeared in their eyes. They had noticed Chu Fan's unusual behavior from the start. Although Chu Fan usually doted on his two little ones, he had never guarded them so closely, refusing to leave their side. But today, Chu Fan was directly guarding the two little ones, even bringing Zhao Yue, the great Xia dynasty's top expert, with him. This instantly made them realize that something must be about to happen to the two little ones. Therefore, Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi also decided not to leave the two little ones, and they stood guard beside Chu Fan. "Husband, is something bad about to happen?" After quite a while, Qing Yao finally stepped forward anxiously and asked Chu Fan. After speaking, she looked at the two little ones with a worried expression. Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran were already asleep at this time. Seeing the two little ones sleeping so sweetly, her eyes held a gentle affection. Luo Tianyi, standing nearby, also looked at Chu Fan with a worried face. She had noticed Chu Fan's strangeness since the beginning of the banquet, and now she was very concerned about his state. Alas, a peerless expert appeared in Chang'an City today. I suspect he came for Wushuang and Yanran, so I want to guard Wushuang and Yanran here. Chu Fan sighed after hearing Qing Yao's words, then spoke slowly, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "If that's the case, then I will also guard Wushuang and Yanran with husband." After hearing Chu Fan's words, a look of worry appeared on Qing Yao's face, but quickly turned into determination. If a peerless expert truly appeared here wanting to take the two little ones away, she would absolutely not agree, even if her cultivation was weak. Luo Tianyi also nodded firmly at Chu Fan. Seeing Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi behaving this way, Chu Fan smiled, then walked over to the two little ones. Looking at the sleeping two little ones, a smile involuntarily appeared on his lips. Just as Chu Fan was looking at the two little ones, a knock sounded from outside the door. Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi instantly became alert, but Chu Fan signaled for Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi to open the door. He knew that the person who came this time was not the peerless expert, because if it were, Zhao Yue would already be on high alert. But Zhao Yue was still staring fixedly at Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, which indicated that the visitor was not an enemy. Qing Yao immediately went and opened the door, and then Chu Fan's father, along with Chu Fan's mother, appeared outside. Both of them wore worried expressions, especially upon seeing Chu Fan and the others inside the room. The worry on Chu Fan's mother's face intensified. "Greetings, mother." "Greetings, father." Upon seeing Chu Tianxiong and his wife arrive, Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi both bowed to them. Feng Shiran immediately stepped forward and helped Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi up, then slowly walked towards Chu Fan. "Is something about to happen? And is it concerning my two grandchildren?" Feng Shiran then directly voiced the confusion in her heart, but it was clear that a look of worry was on her face. Chu Tianxiong, standing beside her, also looked towards Chu Fan, although he was not as perceptive as Feng Shiran. But after returning, Feng Shiran had told him her suspicions, and considering that Chu Fan and the great Xia dynasty's peerless expert were both guarding his grandson, he also had a slight guess in his heart. Chapter 347: A mysterious man infiltrates the palace. Sword Immortal and others appear to stop him. Chu Fan saw the worried look on his mother's face and knew that she had probably guessed most of it. So, he sighed silently and then slowly spoke to Chu Tianxiong and Feng Shiran. "Today, a peerless expert appeared in Chang'an City. Your son suspects he came for Wushuang and Yanran, which is why I am guarding Wushuang and Yanran." After speaking, he slowly cast his gaze upon the two little ones who were sleeping soundly. "In that case, we'll guard with you. Let's see what kind of person dares to try and take my grandson and granddaughter." Chu Tianxiong instantly became enraged after hearing Chu Fan's words. He then slowly approached the two little ones, found something to sit on, and sat down. However, to avoid disturbing the two little ones' sleep, Chu Tianxiong spoke in a very low voice. Feng Shiran finally let go of her worries at this moment, but she still slowly walked to Chu Tianxiong's side, looking at Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran. As for Chu Fan, he waved his hand helplessly. He naturally wouldn't refuse his father and mother's decision, and he also knew that even if he refused, his father and mother wouldn't leave. After Chu Tianxiong and Feng Shiran arrived, quite some time passed, and the palace began to grow quiet. Most people had already fallen into a state of deep sleep, but the so-called peerless expert had yet to appear. This made Chu Fan begin to doubt himself. And just as Chu Fan was wondering if this peerless expert was merely passing through Chang'an City, a mysterious figure appeared outside the palace walls. This mysterious figure exuded a mysterious chi, and a silhouette appeared directly on the palace walls like a ghost. At this moment, this mysterious figure naturally saw Luo Cheng, who was constantly patrolling the palace surroundings, and the 18 riders of Yin Yun behind him. Is the emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty a child of destiny? This fellow alone possesses the power of the White Tiger Star Lord. He is a born war general, a commander. With such a general by his side, conquering is incredibly simple. The mysterious old man looked at Luo Cheng, his eyes filled with shock as he murmured. As a peerless master, he naturally recognized Luo Cheng's destiny as a war general. More importantly, the summoned Luo Cheng did not have the fate of an early death, so with him assisting, the Great Xia Dynasty could go much further. At the city gate, I already saw 2 war generals with top-tier destinies, and now another war general with the power of command has appeared. It seems the Great Xia Dynasty is not as simple as this old man thought. Then, the mysterious figure slowly turned his gaze towards the north city gate of Chang'an City. Having just appeared at the north city gate of Chang'an, he naturally sensed the destinies of Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong. It could be said that the destinies of Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu were enough to dominate a region. However, this mysterious figure quickly headed deeper into the palace. The next second, his figure appeared on a pavilion deep within the palace. At this moment, he naturally saw the 4 terrifying auras guarding this pavilion. It seems they knew this old man was coming, so they sent 4 Saint King level experts to guard this place. The mysterious figure appeared in the center of the 4 without anyone noticing. However, at this moment, among the 4, except for the Wine Sword Immortal, no one else noticed anything amiss. But the Wine Sword Immortal appeared beside the mysterious figure at the fastest speed, his eyes filled with sharp sword intent. Are you the peerless expert the Emperor spoke of? The Wine Sword Immortal looked at the unreliable old man in front of him with some surprise. However, at this moment, he naturally sensed the terrifying power within the old man's body, so he looked at the old man in front of him with a serious expression. At the same time, the Wine Sword Immortal completely unleashed his aura, instantly attracting the other 3 around him. Xikong Changfeng, holding a long spear, stood beside the Wine Sword Immortal, a hint of battle intent appearing in his eyes. As for the other 2, they were the young General Hua Zhubing and the sword god Xie Xiaofeng. Hua Zhubing held a long spear, exuding a terrifying battle intent as he looked at the old man in front of him. And the sword god Xie Xiaofeng looked at the old man in front of him with eyes full of scrutiny. The aura of the Saint King realm belonging to the 4 completely erupted. Just then, several silver-white lights streaked across the sky. The next second, a simple and honest figure appeared before everyone. Old Huang stood before everyone, holding a sword box, and then revealed a simple and honest smile to them. This lineup is truly powerful. Even an ordinary Great Saint-level cultivator would probably be unable to leave this place. And there's even a war general with a Pajun destiny. With a war general of this destiny, the Great Xia Dynasty would have no major problem even if it wanted to dominate the entire continent. They only lack time. I truly wish to see what the Emperor of the Great Xia Dynasty looks like and what kind of destiny he possesses. The old man did not reply to the Wine Sword Immortal's words at this moment. Instead, he looked at the 5 people around him with a shocked expression, but his final gaze fell upon Hua Zhubing. Because he discovered that Hua Zhubing's destiny was even more powerful than the destinies of those he had just seen. Although the destinies of Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong were very powerful, their ability to command an entire army could not compare to Hua Zhubing in front of him. Hua Zhubing's destiny allowed him to command an entire army, while Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu's destinies could not make them true commanders. Of course, even if Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu commanded an entire army, their abilities still couldn't compare to Hua Zhubing. This old man heard that a pair of peerless prodigies were born in the Great Xia Dynasty, so this old man came to see just how talented this pair of peerless prodigies of the Great Xia Dynasty truly are. Then, the mysterious old man cupped his hands to the people in front of him and spoke. At this moment, he had no intention of making a move against the people in front of him. Your Excellency, arriving uninvited so late, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. The Wine Sword Immortal's face showed a solemn expression after hearing the old man's words, and then his voice slowly drifted out. The other people also stared intently at the old man at this moment. There were too many people during the day, and it was not convenient for this old man to appear before too many people, so I chose to visit the Great Xia Dynasty at night. I have truly troubled you all. After hearing the Wine Sword Immortal's unfriendly words, the old man did not show any anger. Instead, he calmly looked at the Wine Sword Immortal in front of him and explained. At the same time, he was constantly surveying the surrounding environment, because the old man noticed that the Saint King level experts around him were still gathering towards his side. Chapter 348 Chu Fan meets the mysterious man. Chu Fan's human emperor destiny. The excited mysterious man. At this moment, Zhao, who was standing beside the two little ones, instantly opened his eyes and looked forward with a solemn expression. His gaze had already pierced through the eaves and was fixed on the old man in the sky. Emperor, this mysterious person has arrived, and his aura has reached at least the quasi-emperor realm. Then, Zhao turned his head to look at Chu Fan with a solemn expression and said, although he couldn't sense the old man's true cultivation at this moment. However, he could guess that the old man's cultivation had reached at least the quasi-emperor realm. How was the situation now? Although Chu Fan could feel a powerful aura at this time, he still asked Zhao with a puzzled expression. Wine Sword Immortal and the others have stopped this mysterious person, but with their strength, they cannot fully stop him. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Zhao also nodded solemnly and continued, although Wine Sword Immortal and the others had stopped this mysterious person. However, if they relied solely on the strength of Wine Sword Immortal and the others, they probably wouldn't be able to truly stop this mysterious person. After all, the mysterious person's strength had far exceeded their imagination, and even Zhao wasn't sure he could stop him. Upon hearing Zhao's words, Chu Tianxiong and the others all showed worried expressions. If even this peerless expert of the Great Xia dynasty in front of them couldn't stop this mysterious person, then their grandson and granddaughter might truly be in danger today. So, Chu Tianxiong and Feng Shiran immediately stood up and fiercely guarded Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran. Even if they died, they would not let their grandson and granddaughter be taken away by others. At this moment, Qing Yao and Luo Tianyi also slowly came to the two little ones' side, and one could see that their eyes were filled with determination. Since that's the case, then let's meet him. After hearing Zhao's words, Chu Fan also understood how powerful this mysterious person, who had already appeared above the Great Xia dynasty, was. So, he spoke with a solemn expression. Zhibao, protect the little highness well. Hao Yue and I will go out and see. Then, Chu Fan slowly looked back at the void realm outside the room, and his voice was filled with coldness as he spoke. As Chu Fan's words fell, Chan Zhibao instantly appeared in the room, and at the same time, the sounds of many armies appeared outside the room. These were the sounds of the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. Chun Zhibao had led the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry to guard outside the Little Highness's room from the beginning, and now Chu Fan directly ordered them to appear. After all, if they had appeared directly in the Imperial Palace at first, it might have attracted the attention of others, but now they no longer needed to hide. Emperor, rest assured, Zhibao will not let the enemy take the Little Highness, even if he dies. Chun Zhibao looked at Chu Fan with determination and said. Then his aura began to permeate the entire room, and instantly, everything in the room was within Chun Zhibao's control. At the same time, on the roof outside the room, Chao Chongqing stood leisurely, his gaze fixed on the sky where Wine Sword Immortal and the others were located. It could be said that the room was extremely safe at this time. It would be very difficult for even an ordinary Great Saint-level expert to break into the room. However, the enemy Chu Fan and the others faced this time far exceeded the Great Saint level. After arranging everything, Chu Fan nodded to Chu Tianxiong and the others, and then left the room with Zhao. Soon, Chu Fan and Zhao arrived beside Wine Sword Immortal and the others, and at this moment, Chu Fan finally saw the mysterious person's face clearly. This mysterious person was an old man with an aged appearance, but from his body, one could see an aura of a celestial Taoist, which surprised Chu Fan. Chu Fan's arrival also made the old man instantly shift his gaze to Chu Fan. However, when the old man looked at Chu Fan, his face showed a look of shock. Human Emperor Fate. How can there be a human Emperor Fate on the continent? Didn't this fate break millions of years ago? How could such a fate appear now? At this moment, the old man also began to speak incoherently. Looking at Chu Fan, his face was filled with more disbelief than shock. He hadn't expected that on this trip to the Great Xia dynasty, he would actually encounter the human Emperor Fate, which had only appeared once millions of years ago. One must know that this kind of fate was a rare occurrence, seen only once every few million years. Even those Emperor Realm fates could not compare to the human Emperor Fate. Chu Fan was also a little surprised as he looked at the mysterious old man in front of him. But at this moment, he also gathered some information from the old man's mouth. That was, he possessed the human Emperor Fate, and this was the reason for the old man's shock. However, Chu Fan himself didn't know that he possessed the human Emperor Fate. He only knew that he possessed the Innate Dao Body. Could it be that this era is truly going to end? Then, the old man looked at Chu Fan in front of him with fiery eyes, but the fiery look in his eyes at this moment was extremely terrifying. At the same time, a hint of anticipation appeared in the old man's heart. The appearance of a human Emperor of Fate also meant that this era's continent would likely be unified once again, and the only one who could unify the continent was the possessor of the human Emperor of Fate. When the Heavenly Dao Alliance first appeared, the old man thought that the Heavenly Dao Alliance's leader possessed the human Emperor of Fate, or at least the human King Fate. But what the old man didn't expect was that the Heavenly Dao Alliance's leader only possessed the Red Dragon Fate. Although the Red Dragon Fate was very powerful in other eras, it could even be said that the Red Dragon Fate had the qualification to unify the continent, which was why the old man, despite his strength reaching this level, didn't bother with the actions of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. However, after coming to this small Great Xia dynasty, he found himself completely shocked. At the city gate of Chang'an, he had already sensed Zhao Zilong's White Dragon Fate. He just didn't expect that Zhao Zilong, despite possessing the White Dragon Fate, had no ambition to contend for the world. One must know that the White Dragon Fate and the Red Dragon Fate were of the same rank Fate, meaning that Zhao Zilong, when he grew up, might be comparable to the Heavenly Dao Alliance's leader. But he didn't expect to see the legendary human Emperor of Fate today. One must know that the human Emperor of Fate was the most top-tier existence on the entire continent. It could be said that the appearance of the human Emperor of Fate also meant that the chaotic world was about to end, and the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate from the Heavenly Dao Alliance would ultimately only be making a wedding dress for the possessor of the human Emperor of Fate in front of him. The old man now finally understood why the Great Xia dynasty had so many general fates. The human Emperor of Fate needed followers, so these generals were all followers of the human Emperor of Fate. Chapter 349, The Mysterious Old Man's Identity, Tianjizi, successor of the Heavenly Mystery Pavilion. At this moment, the senior finally understood why Chu Fan could rise up in a small eastern region. After all, the human Emperor of Fate could explain everything. Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor of Fate, would be the top expert between heaven and earth in the future. Thinking of this, the senior began to feel anticipation for Chu Fan and also wanted to see how long it would take for Chu Fan to mature. I am Heavenly Secret Master. Greetings, little friend. After learning about Chu Fan's fate, the senior's face no longer held any sense of superiority. Instead, he seriously cupped his hands toward Chu Fan and spoke. Heavenly Secret Master Senior, why have you come to my Great Xia dynasty? Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised when he saw the senior's attitude toward him, but he knew it must be related to the human Emperor of Fate the senior had just mentioned. But upon seeing the senior's attitude toward him, Chu Fan's attitude toward the senior also changed. He then questioned the senior in front of him with some confusion. He was also curious about the senior's main purpose for coming to their Great Xia dynasty. Of course, the senior's purpose for coming to their Great Xia dynasty was probably related to his children. Initially, I came to the imperial palace of the Great Xia dynasty mainly to see your children. The unusual phenomena that occurred when your children were born made me feel incredible, which is why I rushed from the central region to the eastern region. But now, after sensing the fate upon your body, I know that the fate upon your children's bodies must have been inherited from you. Heavenly Secret Master then slowly explained to Chu Fan the reason why he appeared in the Great Xia dynasty. Of course, all of this was because Chu Fan possessed the human Emperor Fate. Otherwise, as a top expert, how could he possibly explain so much to Chu Fan? Chu Fan was stunned after hearing the senior's words. He hadn't expected the senior, who was far away in the central region, to have sensed the unusual phenomena when his children were born, instantly causing Chu Fan to become worried. Have those top experts in the central region also sense these unusual phenomena? He then asked Heavenly Secret Master with a worried expression. If all the top experts in the central region discovered the unusual phenomena that occurred when his children were born, then the Great Xia dynasty would likely face extreme difficulties. Little friend, you don't need to worry. Besides me, probably no one in the central region has discovered this unusual phenomenon. After Heavenly Secret Master heard Chu Fan's words, a look of confidence appeared on his face. He then spoke seriously to Chu Fan. Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. He then curiously questioned the system through silent thought. Heavenly Secret Master, the current controller of Tianji Pavilion, and also the successor of the ancient force, Tianji Pavilion. Cultivation, peak quasi-emperor realm. Age, 7,000 years old. The information provided by the system completely shocked Chu Fan. Chu Fan hadn't expected the senior in front of him to actually be the contemporary successor of Tianji Pavilion. Tianji Pavilion had always been rumored throughout the entire continent, but no one had ever seen the true successor of Tianji Pavilion. This is because Tianji Pavilion only has one successor in every generation, or rather, every era. This successor knows everything under the heavens, and their strength is never too weak. But Chu Fan hadn't expected the strength of this generation's Tianji Pavilion successor to have reached the terrifying peak quasi-emperor realm. One must know that such a cultivation level was not far from the legendary Great Emperor realm. Of course, what was even more terrifying was that this person's age had already reached over 7,000 years old. Just as Chu Fan was shocked, Heavenly Secret Master was even more shocked, because he felt as if Chu Fan had completely seen through his cultivation just now. One must know that Chu Fan in front of him was merely at the perfected saint realm. Yet, how could someone with such a cultivation level see through his cultivation? Little friend, did you see through my cultivation? Heavenly Secret Master did not intend to hide it. Instead, he directly questioned Chu Fan. After asking, he looked at Chu Fan's answer with anticipation. That's right. Senior's cultivation has already reached the peak quasi-emperor realm. I'm afraid that must be considered the strongest on the entire continent. Is this the terrifying aspect of the legendary human emperor fate, merely at the entering saint realm, yet able to see through the cultivation of the peak quasi-emperor realm? After 1,000,000 years, my Tianji Pavilion has finally waited once again for a possessor of the human emperor fate. Heavenly Secret Master was also shocked after hearing Chu Fan's words. Although he had some initial guesses in his heart, he hadn't expected Chu Fan to have truly guessed his cultivation. However, thinking that Chu Fan possessed the human emperor fate, which rarely appears even once in 1,000,000 years, he felt it was normal. Little friend, could you allow me to go and see your descendants? Heavenly Secret Master then looked at Chu Fan seriously and spoke. Although his strength had reached the peak quasi-emperor realm, and he could easily ignore Chu Fan in front of him and go in to see Chu Fan's pair of descendants. But Heavenly Secret Master still held great respect for Chu Fan, who possessed the human emperor fate. Since Senior wishes to see them, please come in. Chu Fan also knew that Heavenly Secret Master posed no threat to his son and daughter, so he slowly led Heavenly Secret Master toward the room. However, at this moment, Jiahue was staring at Heavenly Secret Master with vigilance. As for Sikong Changfeng and the others, they all returned to the area surrounding the room to guard it. Although Heavenly Secret Master did not currently show any intention of becoming an enemy of the Great Xia Dynasty, they could not simply relax. Soon, Chu Fan brought Heavenly Secret Master to the outside of the two little ones' room. He then led Heavenly Secret Master into the room without any hesitation. At this moment, when the door opened, Chu Tianxiong and the others inside the room seriously stared at Chu Fan and Heavenly Secret Master behind Chu Fan. Their eyes were full of vigilance as they looked at Heavenly Secret Master behind Chu Fan. It's all right. This senior just wants to see Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran. Chu Fan said slowly, looking at the vigilance in the eyes of his parents, Qing Miao and Luo Tianyi. After speaking, he gave them a reassuring look. At this moment, Heavenly Secret Master stared intently at Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran, and a look of shock could be seen in his eyes. Child of Destiny and Daughter of Destiny. I didn't expect a child of destiny and a daughter of destiny to appear simultaneously on the continent. Is this heaven favoring my Tianwu continent? Heavenly Secret Master then muttered excitedly. At this moment, he had seen the powerful fate possessed by the two little one. It could be said that the fate possessed by the two little one was extremely powerful. They were the legendary child of destiny and daughter of destiny. Chapter 350 Tianjizi's Request, the Yellow Emperor who unified the continent millions of years ago. Although the Heavenly Secret Master initially guessed that the fate of Chu Fan's descendants would not be weak, he did not expect the fate of this pair of Chu Fan's descendants to be so powerful. It can be said that the fate of Chu Fan's descendants can already be compared to Chu Fan's human emperor fate, but Chu Fan's fate is destined to unify the entire world. However, the fate of these two little ones is enough to allow the two little ones to become the most powerful people in this world, and when they grow up, the two little ones will definitely be considered the top experts in this world. Moreover, these two little ones have a father who possesses the human emperor fate. In that case, the growth rate of these two little ones will likely surpass those so-called children of destiny from the past. It seems the continent is about to recover, and proving the Tao will also appear in this generation. Subsequently, the Heavenly Secret Master looked up at the sky with eyes full of vicissitudes, because due to the rules of this continent, his cultivation could not break through after he reached the peak quasi-emperor realm. This is also why, despite his terrifying talent, his final cultivation could only be fixed at the peak quasi-emperor realm. But now, after seeing the fate on Chu Fan and the two little ones, a glimmer of hope appeared in his heart. Since Chu Fan's human emperor fate and the luck fate of the two little ones have appeared, this generation can definitely prove the Emperor Tao. He might have a chance to follow Chu Fan and become an expert of the Great Emperor realm. I have a matter I wish to request, and I ask the young friend to agree. Subsequently, he withdrew the look of anticipation in his heart, instead slowly walking up to Chu Fan and speaking seriously to Chu Fan. After speaking, he looked at Chu Fan with anticipation, clearly wishing that Chu Fan would quickly agree to him. I wonder what the senior is requesting. If I can agree, I should agree to the senior. Chu Fan frowned after hearing the Heavenly Secret Master's words, but he quickly responded to the Heavenly Secret Master. Of course, he did not say that he would definitely agree to the Heavenly Secret Master's request. After all, if the Heavenly Secret Master wanted to take his two little ones away, it would be impossible for him to let the Heavenly Secret Master take them. I want to settle down in Chang'an City. At the same time, how about I lead these two little ones in cultivating? Subsequently, after the Heavenly Secret Master heard Chu Fan's words, he directly stated his request. After speaking, he looked at the two little ones not far from him. In fact, the Heavenly Secret Master initially wanted to follow Chu Fan, but since Chu Fan is the possessor of the human Emperor fate, the Heavenly Secret Master did not know how Chu Fan's path to growth should proceed, so he chose to settle for the next best thing and selected Chu Fan's children. Although he did not know how the possessor of the human Emperor fate should cultivate and grow, it is very simple for the child of destiny and daughter of destiny to grow up. As long as they are given enough cultivation resources and enough cultivation techniques, they can grow up quickly. It can even be said that if the daughter of destiny and the child of destiny want to grow up, they can still grow up even if they are thrown into a place where spiritual chi is exhausted. After all, they're the darlings between heaven and earth. Who knows what kind of back door the heavens will open for them? I want to know why Senior chose my great Xia dynasty. Is it related to the human Emperor fate on me? Although Chu Fan was very tempted after hearing the Heavenly Secret Master's words, he still asked his question. Although the Heavenly Secret Master's strength is very powerful, if he stays in Chang'an City, the strength of the Great Xia dynasty will be greatly enhanced. It can even be said that if the Heavenly Secret Master joins the Great Xia dynasty, the Great Xia dynasty will no longer fear any force. But Chu Fan still wanted to understand clearly in advance why the Heavenly Secret Master wanted to join his Great Xia dynasty. The young friend possesses the legendary human Emperor fate, so the young friend's future achievements will definitely not be low. After all, this is the human Emperor fate that is difficult to appear even once in a million years, and the fates possessed by the generals around the young friend are also enough to help the young friend grow. After the Heavenly Secret Master heard Chu Fan's words, he shook his head and then began his narration. The human Emperor fate is the most top-notch fate in this world. Therefore, it can be said that it is very simple for him to grow up. Of course, if a possessor of the human Emperor fate does not want to compete for hegemony over the world, then it is indeed somewhat difficult for this possessor of the human Emperor fate to grow up. Is the human Emperor fate really that powerful? Seeing that the Heavenly Secret Master kept mentioning the human Emperor fate, Chu Fan curiously began to ask the Heavenly Secret Master about it. One must know that the Heavenly Secret Master was not interested in the innate Dao Body on him at all. Instead, he kept mentioning the human Emperor fate, which instantly sparked Chu Fan's interest in the human Emperor fate. Of course, the human Emperor fate is powerful. Do you know who the last person to possess the human Emperor fate was? After the Heavenly Secret Master heard Chu Fan's words, he felt a little helpless. He then spoke excitedly to Chu Fan, and after speaking, a look of reverence could be seen on his face. Chu Fan shook his head after hearing the Heavenly Secret Master's words. He really hadn't heard of anyone possessing the human Emperor fate, not even knowing about the human Emperor fate on himself. The last person to possess the human Emperor fate was Xianyuan Human Emperor. A million years ago, Xianyuan Human Emperor rose from a small general. He only spent 100 years to grow to the cultivation of the quasi-emperor realm. Moreover, in 300 years, this Xianyuan Human Emperor, who possessed the human Emperor fate, successfully unified the entire Tianwu continent, and then, after unifying the continent, he proved the Tao and became a great emperor. So, do you think the human Emperor fate is weak? Seeing that Chu Fan did not know, the Heavenly Secret Master slowly began to explain. However, he was not surprised that Chu Fan did not know about Xianyuan Human Emperor. After all, there are not many people left on the continent who still know about Xianyuan Human Emperor. Moreover, Chu Fan was born in the barren eastern region. Xianyuan Human Emperor is one of the strongest experts of the entire human race. After he unified the continent, even the experts of the Yao race could only serve as his generals. However, Xianyuan Human Emperor disappeared a million years ago, and at that time, Xianyuan Human Emperor disappeared from the Tianwu continent while he was still middle-aged. Many people believe that Xianyuan Human Emperor should have ascended to the immortal realm, but we do not know if there is a specific immortal realm. Later, the Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty, founded by Xianyuan Human Emperor, began to slowly decline. Now the Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty has been completely submerged in the long river of history, but the Xianyuan clan within the Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty should still be alive in the world today. After speaking about Xianyuan Human Emperor, the Heavenly Secret Master sighed again. Although he is the successor of this generation of the Tianji Pavilion, he does not know much about the former Xianyuan Human Emperor. Moreover, the Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty established by Xianyuan Human Emperor was also lost in the long river of history. So even the Tianji Pavilion does not have many records regarding the deeds of Xianyuan Human Emperor. Chapter 351: The Power of the Xianyuan Family and the Reasons for the Continental Forces' Joint Attack on the Xianyuan Family. Chu Fan was also greatly shocked after listening to Heavenly Secret Master's words. He hadn't expected that 1,000,000 years ago, this continent was unified by someone, and that person was called Xianyuan Human Emperor. One must know that even in his previous life's world, there was an existence called Xianyuan Human Emperor. He wondered if there was any connection with the Xianyuan Human Emperor of this world. Chu Fan, however, shook his head, abandoning the thought in his mind, as the Xianyuan Human Emperor of this world had disappeared for 1,000,000 years. Even if he truly ascended to the immortal realm, the Xianyuan Human Emperor had probably become a top expert in the immortal realm by now. After all, 1,000,000 years was enough time for this Xianyuan Human Emperor to grow. As for Chu Tianxiong, he was completely stunned by Heavenly Secret Master's words at this time, and when his gaze turned to Chu Fan again, it was filled with disbelief. He hadn't expected his youngest son to possess such a terrifying human emperor fate, although he still somewhat disbelieved that his youngest son could become an expert like the Xianyuan Human Emperor of 1,000,000 years ago. However, thinking of his son's growth during this period, he felt that his son might have the opportunity to become an existence like the Xianyuan Human Emperor. By then, the entire continent would probably know his name, Chu Tianxiong. Thinking of this, Chu Tianxiong's face revealed a hint of excited smile. At this moment, Feng Shiran, who was beside him, rolled her eyes at Chu Tianxiong somewhat helplessly, but when she looked at Chu Fan, her eyes also held excitement. Although the Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty has completely disappeared, the Xianyuan family still truly exists, and according to what I know, a prodigy of the Xianyuan family emerged 1,000 years ago. This person's talent is extremely terrifying. In just 100 years, he had already grown to the great saint realm. Although he cannot compare to the former Xianyuan Human Emperor, his talent is still quite good. Heavenly Secret Master then began to introduce the Xianyuan clan. Although the former Xianyuan Immortal Dynasty disappeared into the river of history, the strength of the Xianyuan clan was not weak. Throughout these 1,000,000 years, the Xianyuan clan has continuously produced top prodigies, and these prodigies of the Xianyuan clan have also upheld their ancestors' last wishes, always guarding the Tianwu continent. It seems that because of the disappearance of the Xianyuan Human Emperor, the entire Tianwu continent is bound by law, so even the most powerful prodigies find it extremely difficult to break through to the Great Emperor realm after reaching the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. Moreover, only one peerless prodigy can break through to the Great Emperor realm in an era. One must know that when the Xianyuan Human Emperor was present, he helped several people around him break through to the Great Emperor realm. And this time, after seeing Chu Fan, this prodigy with Human Emperor fate, Heavenly Secret Master believed that Chu Fan would be able to break the rules between heaven and earth, once again becoming an expert of the Great Emperor realm, and then he might have the opportunity to follow Chu Fan and become a great emperor. What's more, Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran also possess heavenly destiny, so this time, the heavenly Dao law cannot suppress Chu Fan's family, which is why Heavenly Secret Master chose Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran. As Heavenly Secret Master narrated, Chu Fan also understood the terrifying aspects of the Xianyuan clan. It can be said that although the current Xianyuan clan cannot unify the entire continent, the Xianyuan clan is the top expert of the entire continent. Even the now famous Heavenly Dao Alliance is probably nothing in front of the Xianyuan family, because besides the Great Emperor background, the Xianyuan family probably also possesses Great Emperor level experts. Of course, all of this was Heavenly Secret Master's conjecture, because Great Emperor level experts possessed by other forces could not escape the baptism of time. After leaving their legacy, they went to seek opportunities beyond the heavens to break through to higher realms. Although some people from the Xianyuan clan also break through to the Great Emperor realm during these 1,000,000 years, Great Emperor realm experts from the Xianyuan clan rarely appeared. This was also the reason for the Great War 10,000 years ago. Cultivators on the continent believe that the Xianyuan family possessed the secret of longevity because the great emperors of the Xianyuan clan rarely appeared. So forces on the continent jointly tried to obtain the secret of longevity from the Xianyuan family 10,000 years ago. However, the Xianyuan family 10,000 years ago displayed unprecedented strength, shocking the entire continent. However, This great war ultimately led to the demise of top experts from the continent's top forces, and 17 quasi-emperors of the Xianyuan family also perished. But even at the end of the war, no great emperor-level experts appeared from within the Xianyuan family. Ultimately, the Xianyuan family chose to live in seclusion, and other top forces, due to the demise of their experts, did not choose to continue searching for the Xianyuan family. After all, even if they found the Xianyuan family, they would be helpless. However, this battle 10,000 years ago consumed a lot of the reserves among these top forces on the continent, which is why quasi-emperor level experts have rarely appeared during these 10,000 years. Now, the quasi-emperor level experts who participated in that great war are probably in seclusion, because if they want to continue living and await the opportunity to achieve the great emperor realm, they must seal themselves away. And some people completely perished due to the injuries left by that great war. 1,000 years ago, Xianyuan Longpa of the Xianyuan clan emerged before anyone could react. When Xianyuan Longpa appeared in the central domain, his cultivation had only reached the king realm. Moreover, he directly emerged with the name Xianyuan Longpa, instantly attracting the attention of the top forces in the central domain. One great saint-level expert even directly attacked, wanting to eliminate Xianyuan Longpa and find the secret of longevity from him. However, he was dealt with by Xianyuan Longpa's guardian, which led these top forces to tacitly accept the emergence of the Xianyuan clan's prodigy. And Xianyuan Longpa did not disappoint them. In just 10 years, Xianyuan Longpa breakthrough to the entering saint realm. In 100 years, he directly entered the great saint realm. Xianyuan Longpa, having entered the great saint realm, even directly challenged the holy lords of various holy lands and the emperors of those top emperor dynasties. This challenge also brought the Xianyuan family back into everyone's sight. However, what was surprising was that Xianyuan Longpa disappeared from the continent in just a few years, as if he had never appeared. After finishing the story of the Xianyuan family, Heavenly Secret Master's face also showed a hint of emotion. Although the events of 10,000 years ago have not passed a long time since now, Heavenly Secret Master was not yet born during that great war. He learned all of this from the previous Pavilion Master of Tianji Pavilion, and at the same time, Heavenly Secret Master also felt it was unfair to the Xianyuan family. After all, the Xianyuan family, which had guarded the continent for generations, was actually besieged by the forces on the continent. Chapter 352. 1 year later, Chu Fan, a mid-stage Saint King. Chu Fan was also greatly shocked after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. He hadn't expected such an event to have occurred on the continent. However, Chu Fan couldn't help but feel sorrow for the Xianyuan family. After all, the Xianyuan family had protected the continent for generations. Yet, in the end, because of these ethereal paths to immortality, they were targeted for annihilation by a coalition of forces from across the continent. He could already imagine how sorrow the Xianyuan family must have felt at that time. At the same time, Chu Fan was also very helpless. He recalled the Sun Human Emperor and the Lunar Human Emperor from the Zhitian world in the novels he read in his previous life. The Lunar and Sun Human Emperors were the two great human emperors of that world, and they were also the top-tier great emperors who protected the human race. Without their protection, the human race would undoubtedly face many calamities. It's even possible that the human race would disappear at the same opportunity where they were born. However, the descendants of the two great human emperors who fought to the death of the human race were not treated kindly, and in the end, not even the descendants of the two great human emperors ever appeared. And the two great human emperors, transformed into a human skin, were still protecting what they sought to protect, which was incredibly sorrowful. Is the path to immortality truly so tempting? Chu Fan then looked out, murmuring softly. Although he had transmigrated to this world a long time ago, Chu Fan's desire for immortality was not as strong as these people's. However, Chu Fan believed that even when facing imminent death, he wouldn't be like this when confronted with immortality. If the path to immortality required such a continuation, he felt it wasn't necessary. That is immortality. Who could resist the temptation of the lofty path to immortality? Heavenly Secret Master rolled his eyes at Chu Fan after hearing his words. His remaining lifespan was not much. If it weren't for this outing where he met Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, and Chu Fan's descendants who possessed the luck fate, then Heavenly Secret Master would have to continue searching for a successor for Tianji Pavilion. After all, the strength of every generation's successor to Tianji Pavilion could not be weak, and once a successor was found, Heavenly Secret Master would go in search of that ethereal path to immortality. However, now he no longer needed to search for that ethereal path to immortality, as the true path to immortality was right beside him. As long as Chu Fan, who possessed the human emperor fate, could achieve the emperor realm, then it would likely be very easy for him to achieve the emperor realm as well. You are the possessor of the human emperor fate, so your focus should now be on the entire world. Heavenly Secret Master reminded Chu Fan at this moment. Although Chu Fan's strength had reached the perfected saint realm, and the great Xia dynasty's power had unified the entire eastern region. But this does not mean that Chu Fan has successfully taken over the human emperor fate. On the contrary, it could be said that Chu Fan is currently only in the process of growing. What he should do now is successfully spread the influence of the great Xia dynasty across the entire continent, and at the same time, like the previous human emperor, Xianyuan human emperor, replace the continent's master, become the continent's master, and unify the continent. I plan to begin expeditions to the other 3 regions when these 2 little ones turn 1 year old. Chu Fan also nodded after hearing Heavenly Secret Master's words. Even without Heavenly Secret Master's reminder, he would choose to embark on expeditions to the other 3 regions when the 2 little ones grew up. Of course, at this moment, Chu Fan wasn't thinking about conquering the central region. After all, with his current strength, conquering the central region would still be somewhat difficult. Excellent. The human emperor fate should be sublimated through continuous conquest, ultimately achieving the position of great emperor. Heavenly Secret Master nodded with a smile after hearing Chu Fan's words. If Chu Fan, who possessed the human emperor fate, brought the other 3 regions under his control, then his cultivation should be able to reach the great saint realm, and even the quasi-emperor realm shouldn't be too far off. After Heavenly Secret Master settled down in Chang'an City, Chu Fan spent the following time cultivating and training troops, and time also passed leisurely in this happy period. In the blink of an eye, it was the 2 little ones' first birthday ceremony. At this time, the 2 little ones had grown up. Because they possessed top-tier physiques, Xiao Wushuang and Xiao Yanran now looked roughly the size of a 3 or 4-year-old child. Moreover, both were very lively, making people want to pick them up the moment they saw them. However, even though they had top-tier physiques and were already 1 year old, they were not made to cultivate, although they were already in the Grotto Heaven realm. But according to Heavenly Secret Master, now was not the optimal time for them to cultivate. The 2 little ones already possessed top-tier physiques, so even if they cultivated slower than others, they would still surpass them. Not to mention that most cultivators begin cultivating at 8 or 9 years old. Heavenly Secret Master wanted the 2 little ones to start cultivating when they reached 5 years old. Chu Fan also agreed with Heavenly Secret Master's suggestion after hearing it. After all, he also wanted his 2 little ones to have a happy childhood. Heavenly Secret Master also frequently accompanied the 2 little ones, but during this year, Heavenly Secret Master also often guided Chu Fan's cultivation. It must be said that Heavenly Secret Master was indeed an old monster who had lived for thousands of years. With his guidance, Chu Fan's cultivation speed also became very rapid. Of course, the most important thing was that Chu Fan had also been cultivating in the Time Pagoda during this period, though Heavenly Secret Master was unaware of his cultivation in the Time Pagoda. However, Chu Fan's growth rate made Heavenly Secret Master feel incredible. In just 1 year, Chu Fan's cultivation had reached the mid-stage Saint King. One must know that according to Heavenly Secret Master's estimation, Chu Fan should have needed at least 5 years to break through to the Saint King realm, but he never would have imagined that Chu Fan only took 1 year to break through to the mid-stage Saint King. Unable to comprehend, Heavenly Secret Master could only attribute the rapid increase in Chu Fan's cultivation to the human emperor fate. At the same time, as Chu Fan's cultivation improved so rapidly, an indelible smile also appeared on Heavenly Secret Master's face. The faster Chu Fan's cultivation improved, the better it was for him. After all, his lifespan was already limited. And in this year, it wasn't just Chu Fan who improved. Jiayue also frequently cultivated in the Time Pagoda, and with the guidance of the old monster Heavenly Secret Master, Ji Haoyue's cultivation also break through from early-stage Great Sage to mid-stage Great Sage. Although he only break through a minor realm, Ji Haoyue's strength increased by dozens of times. Now, even when facing a cultivator at the late-stage Great Sage, he could win. And when facing a cultivator at the Great Sage Perfection realm, he also had the strength to fight. However, against those top-tier cultivators of the Great Sage Perfection realm, Ji Haoyue might not necessarily be able to fight. After all, Ji Haoyue had also fought Jiang Taishu on the arena within the Time Pagoda, but he had no room to retaliate whatsoever. Although the main reason was that Jiang Taishu's cultivation was close to touching the Quasi-Emperor realm, this also showed the gap between the mid-stage Great Sage and the Great Sage Perfection realm. Chapter 353, The Great Xia Dynasty's Growth in a Year, on the eve of military deployment. During this year, Jiang Taishu had been cultivating in the Time Pagoda, so his cultivation is now even more mysterious. It can even be said that Jiang Taishu is now close to touching the Quasi-Emperor realm, and breaking through to the Quasi-Emperor realm is not particularly difficult for him. According to Jiang Taishu, he could break through to the quasi-emperor realm in 5 years. Of course, it wasn't just them who improved during this year. Sikong Changfeng also broke through to the Great Saint realm at an astonishing speed. It should be known that in this 1 year, he broke through directly from late Saint King to the Great Saint realm. Such a breakthrough speed is no weaker than Chu Fan, who possesses the Innate Dao Body. The main reason is that although Sikong Changfeng was in the late Saint King, he was already on the verge of breaking through to the perfected Saint King. So breaking through to the Great Saint realm during this period is also very normal. And the Wine Sword Immortal also broke through to the Great Saint realm during this year. Of course, besides the Wine Sword Immortal, the cultivation of other people also increased by at least one minor realm during this year. For example, Dugu Qiubai and Li Chungang have successfully reached the perfected Saint King and are only one step away from breaking through to the Great Saint realm. Many of the summoned characters in the perfected Saint realm also broke through to the Saint King realm during this year. So the strength of the Great Xia dynasty has increased greatly during this year. And because of the Time Pagoda, the underworld established by Chu Fan in the central region has also successfully begun to slowly revive. Moreover, because the top assassins in the underworld broke through to the Saint King realm, the reputation of the underworld in the central region is now in no way inferior to the Blood Rain Tower. One of the most shocking incidents was when someone offered a high price for the underworld to assassinate a great saint-level expert. Of course, this was also a reason for those top forces to test the strength of the underworld. And the underworld chose to accept this assassination mission directly. To ensure the success of this assassination mission, Jiang Taishu, a great sage perfection expert, directly made a move. The great saint-level expert who was assassinated was a demonic cultivator. The main reason for assassinating him was that the cultivation technique he cultivated led him to slaughter several cities in the central region. It should be known that any city in the central region has millions of people, so this demonic cultivator eliminated tens of millions of people in the central region. This is also the main reason why someone would assassinate him. Although someone had tried to assassinate this demonic cultivator before, the Blood Rain Tower had a very high prize for assassinating great saint-level experts. Therefore, these cultivators who wanted revenge naturally did not have enough money to move the Blood Rain Tower. And the underworld, in order to make a name for itself, lowered the price. Although the demonic cultivator's strength had reached the mid-stage great sage, he couldn't even withstand a single move in front of Jiang Taishu and was directly crushed to death. It was a strength displayed by Jiang Taishu that completely shocked the central region regarding the underworld's power. After all, at first, they knew that the underworld possessed great saint-level experts. Of course, all of this was their speculation. They guessed that there were great saint-level experts in the underworld, but they did not expect that the great saint-level expert in the underworld would be so terrifying. Even a mid-stage great sage demonic cultivator couldn't withstand a single move in front of him. This instantly made the central region's forces realize the extraordinariness of the underworld. And at the same time, these forces in the central region regarded the underworld as a force of the same rank. After all, the strength Jiang Taishu displayed had already reached great sage perfection, and some even speculated whether the cultivation of this expert from the underworld had already entered the quasi-emperor realm. Under such circumstances, the underworld naturally prospered. What's more, the four absolutes also broke through to the Saint King realm during this year. However, after assassinating this great saint-level demonic cultivator, the assassination missions received by the underworld were not particularly high-ranked. The highest was merely to assassinate a Saint King-level expert, but this was very easy for the underworld. However, not receiving top-ranked assassination missions was also a good choice for the underworld. When Chu Fan established the underworld, his main purpose was to gather information about the strength of these forces in the central region. Therefore, the underworld, which was not receiving assassination missions, continued to disperse and gather information about the top forces in the central region. Eastern region, Chang'an City. At this time, the sunlight shone on Chang'an City, making the entire city look prosperous. At the same time, under the leadership of the Great Xia dynasty, the entire eastern region also began to slowly revive. And at this moment, outside Chang'an City, Chu Fan was dressed in golden battle armor, with a golden long sword hanging at his waist, riding a fire qilin, and holding a golden long spear. At this time, he was leisurely riding the fire qilin towards the densely packed army ahead. A year has passed, and now Chu Fan intends to conquer the other three regions. Moreover, the strength of the Great Xia dynasty is now sufficient to conquer the other three regions. The million-strong army outside Chang'an City at this time is what Chu Fan prepared for the three regions. Standing directly in front of this million-strong army was Chun Zhibao, this peerless commander. During this period, his cultivation had also reached the late Saint King. And beside him were Qin Xiong, Yu Fei, and Yang Yi. During this year, although they had been training the army, they did not neglect their own cultivation. Therefore, the cultivation of several people has already broken through to the Saint King realm. As Chu Fan slowly rode the fire Qilin to the front of the million-strong army, the million-strong army at this time looked at Chu Fan, who was dressed in golden battle armor, with fervent admiration in their eyes. During this period, these armies naturally greatly admired Chu Fan, the emperor of the Great Xia dynasty. And this time, their emperor summoning all of them here must be for the purpose of conquering the other three regions. As for why they knew they were going to conquer the other three regions, it was because Chu Fan had already mentioned it a year ago, which is why they are so fervent now. Today, I have summoned you here, and I presume you already know my next objective. Chu Fan looked at the million-strong army in front of him and spoke leisurely. His voice, without any concealment, spread throughout the entire million-strong army, and even the cultivators and common people in Chang'an City heard his voice. Immediately after, these cultivators and common people put down what they were doing and looked towards the direction outside Chang'an City. However, at this time, they naturally could not see Chu Fan outside Chang'an City. Conquering the world is your destiny, so I've decided to conquer the northern region. Chu Fan looked at the million-strong army, whose eyes were filled with anticipation, and slowly spoke again. After speaking, the imperial chi on his body instantly erupted, making him, this human emperor, even more majestic and domineering. Chapter 354: The Expedition to the Northern Region, the Great Xia Dynasty's doting love for the two little ones. At the same time, the human emperor Dharma image behind him completely appeared in everyone's line of sight. This made Chu Fan stand between heaven and earth, as if he were a true human emperor. His words, coupled with the human emperor Dharma image behind him, were perfectly fitting for the scene. Conquer the world, march out to the northern region. As an unparalleled commander, rallying the army's morale was extremely simple for Chen Jibao. He was seen holding his silver spear and shouting loudly. At the same time, his voice instantly spread throughout the million-strong army. Conquer the world, march out to the northern region. Conquer the world, march out to the northern region. Conquer the world. Upon hearing his voice, the million-strong army excitedly followed suit, their voices filled with excitement and fervor. Wave after wave of excited shouts quickly spread throughout Chang'an City, and even the surrounding cities heard these sounds. Consequently, many cultivators and common people looked toward the direction of Chang'an City. Meanwhile, the cultivators and common people inside Chang'an City looked toward the area outside the city. Their faces were filled with anticipation and excitement. At this moment, they knew their emperor was going to march out to the northern region. Since the establishment of the Great Xia dynasty, they had known that there were other great regions besides the eastern region. They just hadn't expected their emperor to march out to another great region so soon. Seeing the million-strong army so excited, Chu Fan nodded in satisfaction. He then nodded toward Chen Jibao. Chen Jibao naturally understood Chu Fan's meaning, so he took out the warships from his storage ring. These had been given to him by Chu Fan long ago. As Chen Jibao took out the warships quickly formed a massive fleet in the sky. Everyone board the warships. March out to the northern region. As many warships appeared in the sky, Chen Jibao directly commanded the soldiers behind him. Following his command, Yu Fei and the others led the army onto the warships. In just a moment, the million-strong army had all boarded the warships. However, Chu Fan did not choose to board a warship. Instead, a jade flute appeared in his hand, followed by the sound of a faint, lingering flute melody. In the next second, the sky began to tremble. Then, a massive object appeared in the distance, and this huge object quickly arrived before everyone. This massive object was a golden palace, pulled by 9 golden Qilin, giving it an extremely imposing appearance. This was the Emperor's Imperial Carriage that Chu Fan had summoned, using one of his unlimited summoning card uses during the past year. The cultivation of each of these golden Qilin had reached the Saint King realm, and the golden palace itself could withstand the attacks of great saint-level experts. As for the fire Qilin Chu Fan was currently riding, its cultivation had already reached the Great Saint realm. It was also something Chu Fan had summoned using an unlimited summoning card during this past year. Once the Emperor's Imperial Carriage appeared, Chu Fan gently patted the fire Qilin's back. Immediately after, he transformed into a streak of golden light and appeared inside the Emperor's Imperial Carriage, while the fire Qilin shrunk to the size of a small cat, becoming a fiery red little Qilin that followed behind Chu Fan. Simultaneously, 100 golden figures appeared around the Emperor's Imperial Carriage. The aura emanating from these golden figures had all reached the Saint King realm. These were the Emperor's Imperial Guards that Chu Fan had exchanged using all his national destiny value. Even after exhausting all his national destiny value, he was only able to exchange for 100 Emperor's Imperial Guards. Fortunately, the cultivation of all 100 Emperor's Imperial Guards had reached the Saint King realm. March out! As Chu Fan's majestic and dominant voice slowly spread across the sky, the 9 golden Qilin pulled the Golden Palace and headed toward the northern region. The warships behind him quickly followed the Emperor's Imperial carriage toward the northern region. Is this the possessor of the human Emperor fate? His growth speed is truly terrifying. I fear it won't be long before he catches up to this old man. Heavenly Secret Master, standing inside the Imperial Palace, showed a look of both helplessness and excitement upon seeing this scene. He had personally witnessed the growth of Chu Fan and the Great Xia Dynasty. In just 1 year, their growth had far exceeded his imagination. However, Heavenly Secret Master quickly turned his gaze toward the 2 little ones beside him. Although Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran were only 1 year old, the intelligence of the 2 little ones was already no weaker than that of a 2- or 3-year-old child. Grandpa Heavenly Secret Master, his father left the Great Xia Dynasty. Chu Wushuang looked at the golden streak of light crossing the sky and asked Heavenly Secret Master, his eyes filled with longing. The little one was currently wearing a silver-white robe and already resembled Chu Fan in his youth, though his chubby little face made him look even cuter. This little one had been the treasure of the entire Great Xia Dynasty throughout the past year, which led to him developing a proud demeanor, but thankfully he did not act like those dissolute young masters. Of course, this was mainly because he was only 1 year old, and he knew that his father was the master of the entire Great Xia Dynasty, which is why he appeared so haughty. Chu Yanran, standing beside him, was vivaciously watching the golden streak of light passing across the sky. If Chu Wushuang was the treasure of the entire Great Xia Dynasty, then Chu Yanran was the treasure among treasures of the entire Great Xia Dynasty. Even the figures who had been summoned over-adored Chu Yanran immensely. When Chu Yanran, who had just learned to speak, wanted a glittering treasure, Lu Bu immediately traveled to the western region to slaughter a flood dragon in the Saint King realm, stole its inner core, and gave it to Chu Yanran. Moreover, he used his magical power to change the inner core's appearance into something a child would like. Later, when Chu Yanran saw a picture of a phoenix and wanted to eat phoenix meat, Yuan Qingdu went straight to the western region Forbidden Zone without a second thought and killed the nearly fallen golden-winged Great Peng that possessed the phoenix bloodline. He then brought the golden-winged Great Peng's meat back for Chu Yanran to eat. Of course, many similar incidents had occurred. Therefore, Chu Yanran was the treasure of the entire Great Xia Dynasty. Whatever she wanted, the people of the Great Xia Dynasty could acquire for her. Heavenly Secret Master was even constantly calculating the locations in the world that possessed Phoenix bloodline, hoping that little Yanran would achieve a level of talent that those prodigies could not reach even before she started to cultivate. Naturally, Heavenly Secret Master was not only calculating the Phoenix bloodline locations, he was also constantly calculating true dragon bloodline locations. Clearly, he wanted the 2 little ones to far surpass other prodigies of the same age before they began to cultivate. Chapter 355, The Expectations of Cultivators from the Eastern Region, and the Frostflower Empire Beneath the Calm. At this time, Chu Fan, who was on an expedition, was also heading towards the northern region. The mighty warships made all the cultivators in the eastern region look up at the sky. They all knew that their emperor was going on an expedition to other places, and after Chu Fan returned from this expedition, the power of their Great Xia Dynasty would be further enhanced. As people of the Great Xia Dynasty, they naturally felt proud. The emperor has dispatched his army again. I wonder how long it will take for him to return this time. Will our Great Xia Dynasty be promoted to the Great Xia Empire then? The strength of our Great Xia Dynasty is incredibly powerful. I believe the emperor will definitely succeed this time. After all, he is a peerless expert who can change the entire eastern region. Yes, the emperor unified the entire eastern region in just a few years. It won't be difficult for him to conquer other places. If you ask me, those people should just surrender to the emperor directly. After all, surrendering to the emperor and joining our Great Xia Dynasty is their best choice. I really hope to join the dynasty's army and go on an expedition with them. It's all my fault that my strength is too weak to join the dynasty's army. Alas, my strength is still too weak. I'll go back and cultivate. When my cultivation is sufficient in the future, I'll join the dynasty's army. The news of the Great Xia Dynasty's expedition to the northern region naturally couldn't be kept a secret. In just a few days, the entire eastern region knew about it. However, the cultivators in the eastern region who heard this news looked at Chang'an City with expressions of reverence. After all, this was the emperor of their Great Xia Dynasty. Their most revered emperor had gone on an expedition, so now they greatly hoped that their emperor would win this great battle. Of course, some cultivators also planned to enter seclusion to break through their cultivation, so that they could join the Great Xia Dynasty's army. The cultivators recruited into the Great Xia Dynasty's army were not weak. so many cultivators in the eastern region had not reached that level yet. This was also why they had not joined the Great Xia Dynasty's army. At the same time as the Great Xia Dynasty dispatched its army, the Shuanghua Empire in the northern region also fell into a mysterious calm. After Ouyang Lingxue returned, she told Ouyang Batian all the information she had received. Ouyang Batian was extremely furious after learning that his entire lineage had perished at the hands of Ouyang Qingtian. At the same time, Ouyang Batian had also made a breakthrough to the Saint King realm during this period. This instantly allowed Ouyang Batian, the emperor of the Shuanghua Empire, to successfully stabilize the entire empire. At the same time, even Ouyang Qingtian was unable to shake his position now. After all, Ouyang Batian had already made a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, so the Shuanghua Empire had now completely become Ouyang Baishan's sole domain. But how could Ouyang Qingtian simply give up? Although his strength was not comparable to Ouyang Baishan's, Ouyang Batian had no male heirs, only Ouyang Lingxue, a female descendant. This was also why the other branches of the Ouyang family had not openly supported Ouyang Batian. After all, they could not let the Shuanghua Empire be handed over to a woman. And it was also very difficult for Ouyang Batian to kill Ouyang Qingtian. Although he wanted to slay Ouyang Qingtian, the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage had already reached the late Saint King. It was naturally impossible for him, a cultivator who had just made a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, to contend with a late Saint King cultivator. In order to keep Ouyang Lingxue away from the court's disputes, Ouyang Batian brought her back to the imperial palace, fearing that enemies might harm her outside. At this moment, Ouyang Lingxue was in the imperial palace, staring at the sky with eyes full of anger. Ever since she learned the true culprit behind the Ouyang family's demise, Ouyang Lingxue had wanted to avenge the Ouyang family. However, seeking revenge was extremely difficult for her. After all, even her own old ancestor could not deal with the Qingtian prince's residence. So how could she, a mere Dharma aspect, realm cultivator, possibly do it? I wonder if the Great Xia Dynasty's strength is enough to contend with the Shuanghua Empire. If I borrow their power, I should be able to deal with the Qingtian prince's residence, right? At this moment, Ouyang Lingxue suddenly thought of the Great Xia Dynasty in the eastern region. She had naturally witnessed the Great Xia Dynasty's power. Even Saint King level experts were easily dealt with by the Great Xia Dynasty. So, Ouyang Lingxue suddenly turned her expectant gaze towards the Great Xia Dynasty. However, as soon as she thought of Chu Fan's attitude towards her, the hopeful look in Ouyang Lingxue's eyes began to dim. Although the relationship between the former Ouyang family and the Prince of Zhenbai's estate was indeed good, the current relationship between Ouyang Lingxue and Chu Fan was not very friendly. In fact, if it weren't for Chu Long's presence, Chu Fan wouldn't even bother to acknowledge her. So, I can't even get revenge now. Ouyang Lingxue then looked up at the sky with eyes full of unwillingness. At this moment, besides unwillingness, her eyes were filled with more confusion. From the very beginning, her main reason for coming to the Shuanghua Empire was to cultivate and avenge the former Ouyang family. But now she found that her enemy was so powerful. No matter how she cultivated, she couldn't catch up to her enemy's pace. This instantly made Ouyang Lingxue begin to doubt whether she could truly avenge the Ouyang family. Just as Ouyang Lingxue in the imperial palace was feeling bewildered, the Qingtian prince's residence had gathered all its experts in the main hall. At this moment, Ouyang Qingtian sat in the main seat, looking at the hundreds of people before him with excitement in his eyes. The qi emanating from these hundreds of people was extremely terrifying. The qi of some of the clones had even reached the entering saint realm. The old ancestor has completely supported us, so now we can even launch a rebellion. However, the old ancestor does not wish for this great battle to last long, which is why he had us prepare in advance. Then, Ouyang Qingtian looked at the crowd below with a serious expression and said, after Ouyang Batian made a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, he also successfully attracted the attention of the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage. The old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage felt that Ouyang Baishan's talent was indeed terrifying, so they could not let Ouyang Batian continue to grow. Otherwise, if Ouyang Batian were to grow to the late Saint King, or even perfected Saint King realm in the future, their generation would probably be completely wiped out by Ouyang Batian. After all, Ouyang Qingtian's lineage had indeed eliminated the Ouyang family of Ouyang Baishan's lineage. It could be said that the relationship between the two lineages was now irreconcilable. While Ouyang Baishan's strength had just made a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, they still had a chance to deal with him. Of course, this was also a desperate struggle, as the Ouyang family of the Shuanghua Empire was not just these two lineages. Chapter 356 The Calm Beneath the Scene. The Madman Ouyang Batian. When the people below heard Ouyang Qingtian's words, expressions of excitement instantly appeared on their faces. They had waited for this day for 100 years, and this day was finally truly arriving at this moment. Are the old ancestors inside the ancestral land not planning to interfere in this great battle? However, at this moment, an elder below slowly stepped forward and voiced his doubt. Rather than voicing his doubt, it was more accurate to say he voiced his concern. The old ancestors inside the ancestral land will be obstructed by the old ancestor of our lineage, and furthermore, we're supported by more than just the old ancestor of our lineage. After hearing the elder's words, Ouyang Qingtian slowly stepped forward, waved his hand, and spoke, a look of absolute confidence on his face as he said this. Although the preparations this time were not entirely sufficient, Ouyang Qingtian believed that after this great battle, the entire Shuanghua Empire would belong to him. Ouyang Qingtian. Your Highness, what about Ouyang Batian, that Saint King level expert? You must know that after a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, dealing with dozens of entering Saint realm cultivators is still extremely easy. At this moment, an elder standing on the other side slowly stepped forward and questioned Ouyang Qingtian. Although the old ancestor of their Ouyang family not appearing to stop the battle between them was a good thing for them, Ouyang Batian was still an expert who had achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King level. Thus, their greatest worry had now become Ouyang Batian. If Ouyang Batian truly intended to fight them to the death, it was likely that dozens, or even all, of the Saint entry-level experts of the Qingtian Prince's residence would perish. The old ancestor intends to personally intervene and stop Ouyang Batian. Once the old ancestor deals with Ouyang Batian, can the remaining people still stop us? After Ouyang Qingtian heard the elder's words, an indifferent expression appeared on his face, and he calmly spoke to the elder beside him and everyone present. It could be said that Ouyang Qingtian was now in high spirits, acting as if he had already completely taken control of the entire empire. Next, you only need to wait for this prince's command. Once you receive this prince's command, lead this prince's great army and charge directly into the imperial palace. Ouyang Qingtian continued speaking after finishing his sentence. At this moment, he did not intend to give the elders around him a chance to ask further questions. After all, he was starting to feel arrogant now, even believing that the entire Shuanghua Empire had already fallen into his hands. However, what Ouyang Qingtian did not know was that everything they plotted was seen by Ouyang Batian. As a controller of the empire, how could Ouyang Batian possibly not pay attention to the Qingtian Prince's residence? At this moment, Ouyang Batian, inside the imperial palace, looked toward the Qingtian Prince's residence with helplessness in his eyes, but within that look of helplessness was contained a terrifying killing intent. It seems that this battle is unavoidable no matter what. Following this, Ouyang Batian sighed and slowly spoke. After speaking, he turned his gaze toward the direction of the Ouyang family's ancestral land. He knew that the main instigators of this battle were those Saint King-level old ancestors inside the ancestral land. But even he, who had achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, was helpless. After all, those old ancestors achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm before him. And more importantly, the cultivation of those old ancestors had already reached mid-stage Saint King or late stage. Therefore, even if he had achieved a breakthrough to early stage Saint King, he was helpless. Since you are so determined to destroy our lineage, then this sovereign will perish together with you this time. Ouyang Batian quickly revealed a look of madness on his face. At this moment, he seemed to have fallen into depravity. The crimson light in his eyes completely burst forth. After a long while, Ouyang Batian slowly retracted the chi on his body. Following this, Ouyang Batian slowly walked toward the imperial palace. Although Ouyang Batian wanted to destroy the entire Ouyang family at this time, he could not possibly allow the junior he cared about most to remain in the imperial palace, waiting to be slaughtered by the crowd. Soon, Ouyang Batian appeared inside the imperial palace, and his steps were extremely steady, as if nothing had happened. Before long, he appeared in the great hall where Ouyang Lingxue was located. Looking at Ouyang Lingxue, whose eyes were filled with confusion, a hint of heartache appeared on Ouyang Batian's face. Lingxue, pack up. I will have someone send you to the eastern region to stay for a period of time. After some time, I will send people to the eastern region to bring you back. Ouyang Batian greatly doted on this, his only bloodline. He slowly spoke to Ouyang Lingxue, looking at her with the indulgent affection of an elder. Ancestor grandfather, is something going to happen? After hearing Ouyang Batian's words, Ouyang Lingxue snapped out of her confusion, then asked Ouyang Batian with a worried look on her face. It is nothing major. I just want you to go to the eastern region to relax. After all, that place used to be your hometown. Ouyang Batian naturally could not tell Ouyang Lingxue what was about to happen. Instead, he gently stroked Ouyang Lingshue's head with an indulgent expression and spoke. Since ancestor grandfather wants me to go, then Ling Shui will go to the eastern region. Although Ouyang Lingxue had already guessed a few things, she also knew that her Dharma aspect realm cultivation would be useless if she remained in the Empire, and would instead become a burden to her ancestor grandfather. So she immediately agreed to Ouyang Baishan's request. Good. Then I will send 2 people to protect you. After hearing Ouyang Lingshue's words, Ouyang Batian finally revealed a satisfied smile. At the same time, he sent the 2 strongest loyal subordinates by his side to protect Ouyang Lingxue. These 2 were the strongest experts of their lineage. Their cultivation had already reached the perfected saint realm. They were not far, even from the Saint King realm. However, the ones who would decide victory or defeat in this battle were the Saint King realm experts. This is why Ouyang Batian sent 2 perfected saint realm cultivators to protect Ouyang Lingxue as she left the Empire. At the same time, Ouyang Baishan's lineage also sent out some experts to protect the younger generation of their lineage as they left the Empire. Although Ouyang Batian had decided to wage a final battle against Ouyang Qingtian's lineage, Ouyang Batian, naturally, could not allow all the juniors of his lineage to perish. Therefore, in order to preserve the continuation of this lineage, he naturally secretly transported all the young prodigies out of the Empire. This time, after settling Ouyang Lingxue, Ouyang Batian had no further reservations within the entire Empire. It could be said that Ouyang Baishan's current idea was extremely extreme. He wanted the entire Ouyang family to be thoroughly cleansed. Chapter 357 Ouyang Lingxue leaves the Empire. Ouyang Qingtian's rebellion begins. Night quickly fell. Ouyang Lingxue left the Imperial Palace under the guidance of 2 powerhouses from the Ouyang Batian faction, who were in the perfected saint realm. Perhaps because Ouyang Batian had already anticipated the arrival of this day, no one knew about their departure from the Imperial Palace. It could even be said that the entire Qingtian prince's residence was now beginning to celebrate the upcoming great battle. Therefore, they naturally wouldn't focus too much attention on the Imperial Palace. Ouyang Batian, inside the Imperial Palace, had also sent away all of his trusted aides, leaving the vast Imperial Palace with only Ouyang Batian, the master of the Empire. However, at this moment, he looked extremely aged, as if he had lost his former demeanor. But besides him, the master of the Empire, the Imperial guards inside the Imperial Palace were also slowly increasing in number. At the same time, cultivators at the entering Saint or True King realm also appeared in the Imperial Palace, making the entire Imperial Palace seem extremely strange right now. Time passed bit by bit like this, and in the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. During these 2 days, no major battle occurred between the Imperial Palace and the Qingtian prince's residence. But Ice Frost City, the imperial city of the Empire, had become terrifyingly quiet. The cultivators also sensed an unusual calm. Moreover, Ice Frost City now allowed entry, but no exit, meaning cultivators who entered Ice Frost City could not leave. This was Ouyang Baishan's measure to prevent escape. As time slowly moved toward night, a huge commotion finally erupted on the side of the Qingtian prince's residence that day. A military force numbering tens of thousands appeared at the Qingtian prince's residence. At this moment, Ouyang Qingtian, clad in black armor and holding a battle spear, looked towards the Imperial Palace with high spirits. He then led the powerhouses of the Qingtian prince's residence and the army of tens of thousands behind him directly towards the Imperial Palace. All commoners and cultivators scattered and avoided them wherever they passed. Because the Qingtian prince's residence had prepared in advance, wherever they passed, the soldiers quickly yielded the path. Alternatively, perhaps because this conflict was a struggle between the direct lines of the Ouyang family, these ordinary troops chose not to participate. Thus, Ouyang Qingtian's journey was smooth, and he easily appeared outside the Imperial Palace as if he were simply going to court. However, the area outside the Imperial Palace was terrifyingly quiet, and on the city walls of the Imperial Palace, an army was waiting for the arrival of Ouyang Qingtian's forces. The leader of this army was a saint entry-level powerhouse, and beside him were dozens of cultivators at the True King realm. This army was now staring intently at the gate of the Imperial Palace, their eyes filled with killing intent. Clop, clop, clop. A sound of horse hooves quickly broke the quiet night. Following this, Ouyang Qingtian, clad in black armor and holding a long spear, slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. The powerhouses of the Qingtian prince's residence behind him were also looking at the Imperial Palace before them with excitement in their eyes. At the same time, the army of tens of thousands behind him fully appeared before everyone. Your Highness, this general has been waiting for you for a long time. Seeing Ouyang Qingtian appear, the middle-aged man in purple armor on the city wall slowly took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke slowly to Ouyang Qingtian. After speaking, he glanced at the group of people and the army of tens of thousands behind Ouyang Qingtian. Ouyang Long, I didn't expect you to be the one guarding the imperial palace this time. But do you think you can withstand the attack of our great army? Ouyang Qingtian was somewhat surprised to see the middle-aged man in purple armor before him. He then looked at Ouyang Long with disdain and spoke. Whether I can withstand it or not, this general will not let you enter today. Ouyang Long replied seriously to Ouyang Qingtian. At the same time, the Saint entry-level cultivators beside him also released their chi. Instantly, the chi of dozens of Saint entry-level individuals appeared on the city wall, and their eyes were filled with battle intent. Ouyang Long, if you retreat now, this king can still guarantee the safety of your family. Otherwise, this king will execute your 9 generations of relatives. Ouyang Qingtian frowned after sensing these energies. He then continued to speak to Ouyang Long, though his words were not just a simple address, but also a threat to Ouyang Long. Ha ha! Ouyang Qingtian, if you want to execute my 9 generations of relatives, shouldn't you kill yourself first? Ouyang Long burst into laughter after hearing Ouyang Qingtian's words. Although Ouyang Long was not from the direct line of the Ouyang family, his bloodline was still that of the Ouyang family. Therefore, if Ouyang Qingtian truly wanted to execute his 9 generations of relatives, wouldn't Ouyang Qingtian himself be implicated? Ouyang Qingtian's expression changed upon hearing this. He then looked at Ouyang Long with anger on his face. Since you intend to resist to the death, then this king shall grant your wish. Ouyang Qingtian then shot an angry glance at Ouyang Long before slowly waving his hand toward the group of powerhouses and the army of tens of thousands behind him. As Ouyang Qingtian's gesture appeared in the dark night, the powerhouses of the Qingtian prince's residence immediately charged towards Ouyang Long's location. Since they had all reached the king realm or above, walking through the air was not a problem for them. A solemn look appeared on Ouyang Long's face when he saw this scene. He then looked at the powerhouses of the Qingtian prince's residence with a hint of killing intent. Leave none alive. At the same time, a cold voice came out of his mouth, instantly making the powerhouses present feel a chilling coldness like ice. The powerhouses beside him also soared into the air and charged toward the powerhouses of the Qingtian prince's residence. Immediately, sounds of weapons clashing echoed throughout the dark night sky. Meanwhile, the army of tens of thousands behind Ouyang Qingtian also charged directly toward the city gate. This army was one of the strongest in the entire empire. The cultivation of every single soldier had already reached the meridian opening realm, and the centurions had reached the divine power realm. Naturally, there were also Kiliarchs at the Grotto Heaven realm among them. It should be noted that the former Chu Tianxiong commanded hundreds of thousands of troops while only in the Grotto Heaven realm. Yet here, this person was merely a Kiliarch. Ouyang Long on the city wall saw this scene and waved his hand towards the archers on the wall. The next second, these archers shot their arrows directly at the army below. Tens of thousands of arrows instantly covered the area outside the city wall. Chapter 358, Ouyang Baishan's Madness, a decade of planning, forbidden techniques. When the army below saw the sky-filling rain of arrows, they rushed toward the city gate, acting as if they had no regard for their lives. However, just as the rain of arrows was about to land on them, they discovered an invisible force above their heads that blocked all the arrows. This allowed them to appear at the city gate completely unscathed, where they immediately began their assault. The several King Realm generals on the city wall who witnessed the scene naturally could not sit idly by. They jumped down from the wall. Then, holding their weapons, they charged into the ranks of the army. Although their numbers were few, their cultivation far surpassed that of the army. Thus, for a time, they managed to halt the advance of the army before them. Ouyang Qingtian frowned when he witnessed this scene. He had not anticipated such a situation occurring now, but he quickly smoothed out his frown. After all, he had been preparing since the moment he decided to stage a rebellion. So how could he not have foreseen this development? Immediately, several King Realm cultivators quickly emerged from the army behind him. These King Realm cultivators soon appeared before the King Realm cultivators who were blocking the way. Then, the two groups of King Realm cultivators began to clash fiercely. Once these two batches of King Realm cultivators began fighting, there was no longer any force capable of stopping the army, so they charged directly toward the city gate. Ouyang Long, who was on the city wall, did not choose to open the city gate and confront the enemy. After all, the attacking side would suffer losses regardless, and it was naturally simpler for them as the defending side. Furthermore, the true outcome of this war depended on Ouyang Batian inside the imperial palace. Therefore, no matter how much they resisted, the conclusion of this great battle hinged on the fight inside the imperial palace. And the facts were exactly as they had thought. An elder appeared before Ouyang Batian, who was sitting in the main hall of the imperial palace. Death chi permeated the elder's body, making him look as if he had crawled out of a coffin. However, this elder had indeed crawled out of a coffin. He slowly walked in Ouyang Baishan's direction. At this moment, Ouyang Batian in the main hall did not speak, watching the elder walking toward him with tranquil eyes. The elder also remained silent, instead staring fixedly at Ouyang Batian with his pair of ancient eyes. I didn't expect you old fellow would finally be unable to resist making a move. Aren't you afraid that the old ancestor of our lineage will return to settle the score? Ouyang Batian spoke slowly, looking at the elder not far in front of him, though a trace of helplessness could be seen in his eyes. If he were not wary of the elder before him, how could he have lived such a miserable life? Of course, the most crucial reason was the disappearance of the old ancestor of their lineage. Otherwise, how would Ouyang Qingtian's lineage dare to make a move against theirs? Although Ouyang Batian had also achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, he did not have much time left to cultivate. Therefore, it seemed extremely difficult for the current Ouyang Batian to defeat the elder before him. It could even be said that he had no chance whatsoever of defeating the elder before him. After 100 years, does this little one no longer know how to respect his elders? The elder did not refute Ouyang Baishan's words. Instead, a trace of disdain appeared in his eyes as he spoke to Ouyang Batian. After speaking, the aura belonging to the late Saint King stage completely erupted from his body. Ouyang Batian felt a terrifying pressure emanating from this chi, but he did not choose to submit. Instead, he looked at the elder and spoke word by word. You are not worthy to be called an elder, so how could I, Ouyang Batian, possibly respect you? His voice carried determination. Even if the entire world were turned upside down, he would not change his mind. It seems you think your wings have hardened because you achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, which is why you dare to speak to this old man like this. After hearing Ouyang Baishan's words, a long-lost trace of anger appeared on the elder's face. This anger looked extremely eerie on his ancient and withered face, just like a devil that had crawled out of hell. If I hadn't achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, I probably wouldn't even be able to see your face. But since you want to kill me, then try it. Ouyang Batian appeared extremely calm after hearing the elder's words, yet a look of madness appeared on his face. At this moment, his son had already been sent out of the Shuanghua Empire, so he could disregard the consequences of any action he took now. He even wanted to destroy the entire empire now. The weak should have the awareness befitting the weak. When the elder heard Ouyang Baishan's words, a look of instant fury appeared on his face. He had originally wanted to see Ouyang Baishan's panicked and helpless expression, but he did not expect to be met with Ouyang Baishan's calm expression, which instantly enraged the elder. If that's the case, then come and try it. Let's see who the weak one truly is between us. Ouyang Batian suddenly emitted a terrifying chi from his body. This chi quickly surpassed the early stage Saint King and reached the mid-stage Saint King. At the same time, a terrifying blood essence emanated around him. This blood essence seemed ready to devour the entire world, just like a demon walking out of hell. You cultivated a forbidden art. You are courting death. The elder was completely shocked when he sensed the chi on Ouyang Baishan's body. He had not expected Ouyang Baishan's choice to be this. Ouyang Baishan's chi had already reached the mid-stage Saint King. Moreover, the elder could also feel a cold chi emanating from Ouyang Batian, like something that had ascended from hell. Therefore, at this moment, he guessed the nature of the change in Ouyang Baishan's body. I began to cultivate more than 10 years ago. From that moment on, I decided that the entire empire would accompany my grandson in death. Ouyang Batian appeared utterly deranged at this moment. His voice roared like thunder, spreading throughout the entire imperial palace. At the same time, the blood-red chi on his body instantly spread and enveloped the entire main hall of the imperial palace. As for the elder before him, he was now looking at Ouyang Batian with a face full of terror. At this moment, he also sensed the terrifying nature of the chi emanating from Ouyang Batian. Moreover, this chi carried an ominous quality. Even he, standing within it, felt his cultivation constantly weakening. Although the effect was not great for him, an expert at the late Saint King stage, it was still terrifying for him. Chapter 359, The Terrifying Blood Sacrifice Forbidden Technique, the birth of the Ouyang family ancestor. The aura currently emanating from Ouyang Batian caused the old ancestors of the Ouyang family in the ancestral land to awaken one after another. This is the blood sacrifice forbidden art. How could someone in our Ouyang family cultivate this kind of forbidden art? From within a coffin, a skeletal hand slowly crawled out, and at the same time, her hoarse voice echoed around. However, one could hear a hint of shock and disbelief in his voice. It's that fellow Ouyang Batian. I didn't expect he actually cultivated the blood sacrifice forbidden art. Does he intend to destroy our entire Ouyang family? Just as this voice spread, another voice emerged from a different coffin next to the source of the first voice. Immediately afterward, the lid of that coffin was instantly flung off, and an old ancestor dressed in a white robe slowly crawled out from inside the coffin. The old ancestor carried a terrifying aura, but because he had been asleep for too long, the death chi on his body had not yet dispersed. At this moment, when he looked toward the imperial palace, his eyes were filled with sharpness. But even more prominent was rage. Let's go. No one expected things to escalate to this point. Right after this person's voice fell, another old ancestor dressed in a white robe slowly crawled out from another coffin. At this moment, his eyes held a look of helplessness. Although these Saint King-level old ancestors were not interested in the Empire's imperial throne, what Ouyang Batian was doing now had exceeded the scope of what they could tolerate. Therefore, they naturally had to deal with Ouyang Batian now. After this old ancestor's voice fell, 5 old ancestors instantly appeared in the sky, and then they all transformed into streaks of light, heading toward the imperial palace hall. However, at this moment, it wasn't only the old ancestors of the Ouyang family who sensed this terrifying aura. Other experts within the imperial city also sensed this aura at this time. After all, the experts throughout the entire Shuanghua Empire who had reached the Saint King realm were not limited to just the few old ancestors of the Ouyang family. At this moment, in the Su family, not far from the imperial palace, Su Zhan looked at the strange aura in the sky, and a look of terror appeared on his face. At this moment, an old ancestor appeared beside Su Zhan. This old ancestor emitted a strange aura, but it was clear that this old ancestor's cultivation was not weak. Su Zhan, the contemporary family head of the Su family, greets the old ancestor. Su Zhan respectfully bowed to the old ancestor in front of him, and at the same time, a look of shock could be seen in his eyes. Clearly, Su Zhan had not expected his own old ancestor to awaken at this time. I didn't expect that the contemporary emperor of the Ouyang family would actually cultivate this kind of forbidden art. If this isn't handled well, the empire's future days might be difficult. The Su family ancestor waved his hand at Su Zhan, and then looked toward the imperial palace with schadenfreude in his eyes. This old ancestor's cultivation had also reached the Saint King realm. So in that instant just now, he sensed the strange aura filled with slaughter emanating from the imperial palace. This was an abnormal phenomenon that only top-tier forbidden arts could produce. Old ancestor, what should our Su family do next? Su Zhan was also extremely shocked after hearing his old ancestor's words. He hadn't expected that fellow Ouyang Batian had actually cultivated the legendary forbidden art, so he stepped forward anxiously and questioned his old ancestor. Although he has indeed cultivated a forbidden art, his cultivation is currently only at the early stage Saint King. Even if he uses the forbidden art to raise his cultivation to the mid-stage Saint King, he still cannot stop those old fellows. Therefore, this Ouyang Batian cannot affect the Ouyang family. At most, he will just make the empire into a joke. The Su family ancestor shook his head after hearing Su Zhan's words. Although he also hadn't anticipated that Ouyang Batian would cultivate a forbidden art, such a minor forbidden art was still insufficient to affect the entire Ouyang family. After all, only Saint King level experts like them truly knew how terrifying the Ouyang family was. It could be said that Saint King level experts were not rare in the Ouyang family. Moreover, the cultivation of the Ouyang family's first ancestor had even reached the Saint King consummation realm. Of course, the Ouyang family also had an expert who had long since achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King consummation realm, but had never appeared, and this person was precisely the old ancestor of Ouyang Batian's lineage. Having achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King consummation realm, he went to seek the opportunity to achieve a breakthrough to the Great Saint, and he never returned from that journey. Su Zhan nodded after hearing his old ancestor's words. As one of the Empire's Grand Marshals, he naturally understood the meaning behind his old ancestor's words. Since this major conflict would not significantly affect the Ouyang family, their Su family naturally had to continue following the empire. At this moment, the Su family was not the only one looking toward the imperial palace. There were also the Wang family and the Zhao family in other directions. These 3 great families were the 3 strongest families in the entire imperial city. Furthermore, the old ancestors of every family among these 3 great families were Saint King level experts. This was the reason why the 3 great families were the top 3 families in the imperial city. Among them, the Wang family was the leader of the 3 great families. It was rumored that the Wang family had 2 Saint King level experts, and this was likely true. Otherwise, how could the Wang family be the head of the 3 great families? However, although the 3 great families were looking toward the imperial palace, their choices were the same as the Su families. After all, for a cultivator who had just achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm to try and affect the entire Ouyang family was simply wishful thinking. while everyone's attention was focused on the imperial palace. At this time, all the old ancestors of the Ouyang family had already appeared in the imperial palace hall. At this moment, when they looked once more at Ouyang Batian amidst the turmoil, their eyes were filled with helplessness. Batian, stop. Doing this will only destroy yourself. An old ancestor slowly stepped forward and spoke to Ouyang Batian with some helplessness. After speaking, a look of pity could be seen in his eyes. This old ancestor was quite friendly toward Ouyang Batian's lineage, so now he only wanted Ouyang Batian to stop. Ha! I no longer have a chance to stop. Isn't all of this thanks to you all? Ouyang Batian, who was in the midst of the storm, laughed loudly as he looked at the old ancestors of the Ouyang family who had appeared before him. At this moment, his face was filled with rage and unwillingness. If it weren't for these old fellows continuing to indulge Ouyang Qingtian's lineage, how could he, Ouyang Batian, have been driven to this point? After all, Ouyang Batian was, by all accounts, an emperor of great talent and strategy. Chapter 360, the shameless ancestor of the Ouyang family. Ouyang Batian's terrifying plan. At this moment, Ouyang Batian's face was filled not only with anger and unwillingness, but more so with sorrow, as all of this was caused by the old ancestor of the Ouyang family's neglect. In this world where martial arts are revered, only the fittest should survive. You should let go. Another old ancestor slowly walked out at this time and spoke to Ouyang Batian, but his tone was more like a command. It was as if a powerful individual, high above, was pitying a pathetic weakling. Survival of the fittest? If the old ancestor of our lineage were here, who among you would dare to be so presumptuous? Ouyang Batian also looked at the old ancestors before him with great assertiveness and retorted. Of course, at this moment, he knew he was not a match for these old ancestors. Therefore, Ouyang Batian appeared extremely sorrowful at this time. It's not too late to turn back now. Otherwise, the few of us will have no choice but to suppress you. Even if Ouyang Long returns, he won't blame us. Ouyang Batian's words clearly reminded the old ancestors present of that prodigy. Thinking of the prodigy of their Ouyang family, they couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. However, since things had escalated to this point, they naturally couldn't watch Ouyang Batian continue to act so recklessly. The Ouyang Long he spoke of was the old ancestor of Ouyang Batian's lineage, and also the most outstanding prodigy the Ouyang family had seen in thousands of years, having broken through to the Saint King realm in just 300 years. Although such talent would only be considered a genius in the central region, in the northern region, it was considered a top-tier prodigy, even a rare prodigy, seen only once in 1,000 years. Do you still have the face to mention the old ancestor? If it weren't for you, how could our lineage have fallen to this state? The old ancestor will surely cleanse you first when he returns. After hearing the name of his old ancestor, Ouyang Batian's eyes showed a hint of fervor and respect, but soon he looked at these so-called old ancestors before him with anger. When Ouyang Long was still around, these fellows, in order to curry favor with Ouyang Long, directly gave the imperial throne, which was originally supposed to be decided by a grand competition, to Ouyang Long's lineage. This was also why Ouyang Batian was able to ascend to the imperial throne so easily. However, later, because Ouyang Long disappeared, these old ancestors of the Ouyang family began to ignore Ouyang Batian's lineage. They even later directly condoned Ouyang Qingtian's lineage in slaughtering Ouyang Batian's lineage. Perhaps to them, after Ouyang Long disappeared, Ouyang Batian's lineage had no value, so they naturally wouldn't bother with Ouyang Batian's lineage again. Even if he returns, what of it? You must know that you have now cultivated a forbidden art. Even the entire world will be against you. At this moment, the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage, who had just appeared, also stepped forward and spoke to Ouyang Batian. After speaking, his face still carried a hint of disdain. This elder and Ouyang Long were originally prodigies of the same era, but in that era, he was always suppressed by Ouyang Long. Therefore, after Ouyang Long left the empire, he allowed the cultivators of his lineage to target Ouyang Batian's lineage so severely. And this was also the cause of the great battle today. Today, I originally intended for the entire imperial city to be buried with my Ouyang Batian lineage. I want you all to be buried with my grandson and son. Ouyang Batian did not refute the elder's words. Instead, the chi on his body was continuously rising. At this moment, Ouyang Batian himself went berserk. As the chi on his body began to rage, the disciples of the Ouyang family in the imperial palace began to writhe in pain on the ground. At this moment, it was as if a terrifying toxin was corroding their bodies. Even the disciples of the Ouyang family in the Qingtian prince's residence outside the imperial palace also began to writhe in pain on the ground. The several Saint King-level old ancestors of the Ouyang family naturally also sensed this scene. although Ouyang Baishan's forbidden art had little effect on them. But for the weaker cultivator disciples of the Ouyang family, it was an absolute catastrophe. This forbidden art of yours isn't a forbidden art for increasing strength, is it? The old ancestor of the Ouyang clan, who had reacted, looked at Ouyang Batian and roared at him, his eyes filled with anger. Although they had always stayed in the ancestral land, these disciples of the Ouyang family outside were, after all, their descendants. Therefore, seeing this scene, they were naturally furious. This is the blood refinement forbidden art I obtained in a secret realm when I was young. It uses my bloodline to burn the entire Ouyang family. Cultivators of the same lineage closest to me will perish due to the forbidden art within my body. I wonder what the old ancestors think of this move of mine. At this moment, Ouyang Batian had completely gone mad. When he looked at the elders before him, his eyes were filled with pleasure. Especially when he saw panic in the eyes of these elders before him, he became even more delighted. If you do this, those of your lineage will also suffer and die unwillingly. The old ancestor of the Ouyang family, who had been silent, wearing a white robe, slowly stepped forward and spoke to Ouyang Batian. At this moment, he was not as angry as the other old ancestors of the Ouyang family. Instead, he seemed very calm. The people of our lineage have already been sent out. Although this forbidden art is a blood refinement forbidden art, it only works on those of the same bloodline within 1,000 li of me. So, it is naturally useless to the people of our lineage. Ouyang Batian slowly spoke to the elder before him. But it was clear that Ouyang Batian was very proud at this moment. Although his cultivation was indeed inferior to that of the old ancestors of the Ouyang family before him. But this time, Ouyang Batian had indeed schemed against the entire Ouyang family. Even the old ancestors of the Ouyang family before him could not stop it. I didn't expect you to have planned everything from the very beginning. However, since you have already planned it, then this venerable one will first kill you. In that case, the blood refinement forbidden art should be broken, right? The old ancestor of the Ouyang family who had just spoken also showed a hint of anger after hearing Ouyang Baishan's words. He hadn't expected Ouyang Batian to have made arrangements so early. Then, the aura of late Saint King belonging to this old ancestor of the Ouyang family completely erupted, and at the same time, a crimson long spear appeared in his hand. Subsequently, the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding the long spear, directly. Chapter 361, Ouyang Baishan's last trump card, negotiating with the ancestor of the Ouyang family. Seeing this, the other old ancestors of the Ouyang family also successively drew their weapons and charged toward Ouyang Batian. Instantly, a terrifying chi began to spread throughout the sky. Ouyang Batian, witnessing this scene, showed no panic. Instead, he stared at the several old ancestors of the Ouyang family with a look of frantic laughter on his face. At the same time, the terrifying chi emanating from him instantly permeated the entire imperial palace. Ouyang Batian then spread his arms, awaiting the arrival of death, showing no intention of resisting. The old ancestors of the Ouyang family immediately reacted upon sensing this situation, although they did not know why Ouyang Batian chose to wait for death at this moment. This strange reaction naturally drew their attention. The old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding a scarlet gold long spear, stopped first, then reached out to stop the other several old ancestors of the Ouyang family. When he looked at Ouyang Batian again, his eyes were filled with shock and unwillingness. Because he had already guessed certain things, this old ancestor of the Ouyang family was so shocked and unwilling at this moment. You have bound your life to the disciples of the Ouyang family. Doing this will destroy the entire Ouyang family. This old ancestor of the Ouyang family had naturally seen through Ouyang Baishan's intentions, so he spoke to Ouyang Batian with a gloomy expression. He had not expected Ouyang Batian to be so ruthless, binding his life to the numerous bloodline disciples of the Ouyang family. If Ouyang Batian were to fall, these disciples of the Ouyang family would definitely fall along with him. This was why the old ancestor of the Ouyang family chose to stop, just as he was about to kill Ouyang Batian. They certainly resented Ouyang Batian greatly now, but they could not kill him. If they killed Ouyang Batian now, the Ouyang family would face the continuous death of its disciples. Unless they could find a way to undo this forbidden art of Ouyang Batian, they could not kill him. Old ancestor, why are you afraid to act? Didn't you say you wanted to kill me? Come on. Ouyang Batian looked at the old ancestor of the Ouyang family before him and spoke provocatively. He naturally knew about this forbidden art on his body. It was precisely this forbidden art on his body that saved his life. It could be said that these few old ancestors of the Ouyang family dared not attack him now. Otherwise, the entire empire would fall into complete chaos because of this great battle. The entire empire might even collapse entirely because of this great battle. Even if we can't kill you, we can still imprison you. We just need to ensure you don't act recklessly. The old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage also stepped forward with a gloomy face and spoke to Ouyang Batian. After speaking, the qi belonging to the late Saint King emanated from him. If the old ancestor intends to imprison me, I'm afraid he will be disappointed. Unless I willingly stop, the forbidden art on my body can never be concluded. Even if I don't die, they will suffer severe harm, and decades, or even a century from now, the disciples of my Ouyang family will fall one after another. Is the old ancestor willing to see this happen? In fact, Ouyang Batian had two plans in his heart from the very beginning. The first plan was to completely destroy the entire Ouyang family. However, his cultivation had only reached the early stage Saint King, making it extremely difficult to destroy the entire Ouyang family. Therefore, Ouyang Batian had now begun to implement his second plan, using the forbidden art he obtained to control the entire empire. He believed that these few old ancestors of the Ouyang family dared not gamble against him, so he would ultimately be the decision-maker of the empire. At that time, he could continue to gather strength and seek revenge for his lineage. What must you do to undo the forbidden art on your body? The old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding the scarlet gold long spear, frowned and questioned Ouyang Batian. He knew that Ouyang Batian choosing not to self-destruct was mainly because he was waiting for their subsequent demands. If they could satisfy Ouyang Batian's demands next, then the entire Ouyang family might still be preserved. I want to regain control of the Shuanghua Empire. Seeing that his plan had succeeded, Ouyang Batian looked at the old ancestor of the Ouyang family and spoke with determination. After speaking, a hint of mockery appeared on his face. That is impossible. Immediately after he finished speaking, the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage stepped out and flatly refused him. It had been hard enough for their lineage to ascend the imperial throne, so he naturally could not allow the imperial throne to return to Ouyang Batian just because of a single sentence. Continue speaking. However, just as he finished speaking, he was stopped by the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding the scarlet gold long spear. This old ancestor then looked meaningfully toward Ouyang Batian. Although Ouyang Batian had committed such a treasonous act, what he was doing now was still acceptable to them. After all, given the current situation, they had no choice but to agree. Meanwhile, the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage looked at Ouyang Batian and the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding the scarlet gold long spear before him with helplessness and fury. I want everyone in the Qingtian prince's residence to die. After hearing the words of the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, holding the scarlet gold long spear, Ouyang Batian slowly looked at the old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage and spoke. After speaking, a playful look appeared on his face, and at the same time, he waited for the reply of this old ancestor of the Ouyang family. That is impossible. Absolutely impossible. The old ancestor of Ouyang Qingtian's lineage instantly bristled upon hearing Ouyang Batian's words, roaring furiously at Ouyang Batian. Isn't this condition too excessive? I can promise to hand over all the culprits who previously killed members of your lineage for you to deal with, but the Qingtian prince's residence lineage cannot be completely wiped out. This old ancestor of the Ouyang family ignored the old ancestor of the Qingtian lineage beside him, who was glaring angrily at Ouyang Batian, and instead stepped forward slowly to speak to Ouyang Batian. However, it was evident that the angry qi within the body of this old ancestor of the Ouyang family was being constantly suppressed by him. If it weren't for the forbidden art inside Ouyang Batian's body threatening the lives of all the Ouyang family disciples, he probably would have already been unable to resist raising his long spear and rushing forward to kill Ouyang Batian. Upon hearing the words of this old ancestor, the old ancestor of the Qingtian lineage instantly looked at the old ancestor beside him with a horrified expression. He never expected the old ancestor beside him to actually agree to Ouyang Batian's request.